body
Yeah.
what a well-minded, grown-ass black woman is supposed to be like. And we stand with you always. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you, because you are my sister. And this is a safe space for me to say what I need to say. Because at times when we're at our lowest, we need our sisters. It's like you got
He said, at times when the black man is at his lowest, we need our sisters. Well, you know what? We said we're going to have a real conversation tonight because his comment that at the very end made me pause and made me want to have a conversation with y'all tonight. Now, I won't be alone. There'll be a few people coming up onto the panel. I think Aries will come on, Seaway, Jay, Sean, they'll come on in a few moments. But I wanted to share my thoughts around this situation, right? I think first and foremost, Jeezy is somebody who is very much someone who is self-aware. He's has some wisdom. He seems very smart. He seems to be someone who is someone who's aware and can articulate himself very, very well. And I love that, right? Because I think that we need that. And so for me personally, listening to his interview, I actually genuinely liked the interview. I think there were some great points, some great things that were made aware. I will say that, and my initial thoughts were, I didn't like the way that the conversation went between him and Nia Long. I think Nia Long was the wrong person. Personally, it might have been the editing, it might have been Nia Long, but the additions that she brought in felt like it almost doing too much, just a little bit. This is a little critique. I just felt like the little additions that Nia Long was adding was annoying. It wasn't really in alignment, but it may have been the editing. Yeah, it may have been the editing of the show and the way that it edited. So for me personally, I was like, I don't like the way that's gone. I didn't like the way that every time when he says something, the way she's adding something just feels like it almost distracted from the conversation rather than complemented to the conversation. So I was a little bit like, okay. But the overall conversation was quite impressive. I enjoyed it. And I'd love to hear more. I think also that with Nia Long, she has her own story, and I would love to hear Nia Long's story, right? Because I was like, you know what? I would love to hear what she's got to say, because her, Ima Nduku situation is also a story for the cards too. So that's something that I would love to go deeper into. Maybe she has the right time and the right person. She'll also share her story too. I felt like it would be beneficial to hear her as well. I think when he started saying about this conversation needs to be for the brothers and the sisters, I was like, okay, I hear you. I'm a little bit like, you know what? I hear it. I'm glad that you've given it to Nia Long to have the conversation. But I'm just gonna be saying again, I didn't, that last comment, I was a little bit like, what's going on here? Because I was like, why is it that the black brother is telling us now that at times of our lowest, we need our sisters? I was kind of hoping to say, I want to be fair and say that maybe he means in times of hardship, you need your brothers and your sisters in terms of life, not necessarily relationship, but just in terms of just life, relationships wise. Then I'm not mad at that if that is the case. I think obviously because his history with obviously dating, he's now dated Jeannie Mai. People are going to look at it and go, well, if he's dating Jeannie Mai, she's not of the black persuasion. So that's also another thing as well. So yeah, that was my thought process in that regard as well. So I thought about that and I was like, okay, cool. I think my initial thoughts about his breakup with Jeannie Mai, I think there's definitely a little bit of triggering that's happened. I think he kind of alluded to the fact that her behavior was something that I think has seen before. I think it goes back to what his mother was doing. I felt like he was alluding to the fact that that's what he saw. I also feel like as well he spoke about leadership at one point. And the way he mentioned leadership, I was like, yep, Jeannie Mai ain't getting led by nobody. I feel like Jeannie Mai, she is not going to be led by anybody. You can try it, but it's not going to work. You can try, but it's not going to work. So for me, I was like, yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why you suffered with her. The other aspect too, they mentioned about therapy. And she's like, well, did you guys try therapy? And he said, yeah, we tried therapy. Well, that's it then. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on a minute. They only went to therapy. Okay, did you guys go for long? Like, did you guys actually get deep with it? Like, what is it? Because you know, that therapy, it didn't seem like it actually helped, right? But we didn't go deep into the conversation, so we don't actually know. But yeah, I would have loved to know, uh, you know, on this situation, you know, in terms of, you know, how deep they got with the therapy. I think also as well, what I would say, um, you know, I want to say as well that I do feel, and this is where the conversation really is going to be on about as well, um, is that I feel like with the Jesus situation, I felt like this interview partly was about getting the sisters on side. I felt a little bit like that, you know, just felt a little bit like that. And I said it before, the comments about the sisters supporting him when he's at his lowest is kind of a low blow, because why can't we support you when you're at your highest? Why do you need the support at the lowest? That's the only part I had a little, that's the only part I was like, woo, why is it that you want the sisters help at your lowest, but not at your highest? So now it look a little bit like you pandering now to change branding a little bit, you know, to help yourself. Or rather, you know, you realize you made a mistake and you want to come back. You know, we saw a little bit. We saw how he was flirting with Neil Long as well in the interview. He pretending as if that he at one point he was pretending as if you know the what's he say the he said what did he say, he wasn't a good guy, he said a real gangster or something like that doesn't cheat. I was, and then he, you know when a brother is like doing that little game where he's like, you know what, I would never do that to you, kind of energy. Okay, that's when I started looking at it going, he started doing that. I will never cheat on you, kind of energy. I said, he said, oh, real guys don't cheat. I was like, the way you're saying it, sir, the way you're saying it, sir, I don't believe it. You sound like you're dropping a bit of game right here for Nia Long. So I was like, I was watching him on that. I was like, okay, I'm hearing you. You know, so hey, but again, like I said, I did respect the way, you know, I did respect the way that he handled the question about his ex. He didn't try to expose her. He didn't try to, you know, be bad about her, like bad mouthing her, or anything like that. He just, you know, he just kind of was respectful about the way he dealt with it. There was little or none information provided, but he was kind of respectful about it. And so I don't want to be mad at it. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about, again, the fact that we are not going to be using our sisters as a rehabilitation center. So if you're new to the channel, do me a massive favor. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification uploads. We appreciate y'all, and welcome to Little Blackbird 91. You can subscribe to us. You can also support the channel by joining our membership as well. It is £1. It is $1. Join the team, join the people then. And also you can join our Patreon as well in the link description down below if you love TV shows and want to discuss them as well in our Discord. And don't forget as well, we have our fantastic merchandise as well. Grab your hoodie, grab your hats. You can see that I'm wearing some. Grab those as well. The links are down below. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, subscribe. And those of you returnees, you got the minerals. You got the minerals. Okay. All right, cool. So let's talk about it. I will drop the link in the chat if you guys do want to have your say as well. You know, oh my gosh. Let's I'll drop the link in the chat if you want to have your say tonight as well. So yeah, no. I will say this as well. So the situation with you know, our brother, let's play a little bit of the clip and I'll talk.
It's like you guys need your brothers. And that's why this conversation was so real, because I hope and I pray that this conversation can open up different conversations in our culture about being there for each other and not being at odds with each other, no matter what we.
So of course, you know, with Jeezy, I do understand one aspect of it. Like when he's talking about us supporting each other, I definitely get that part of the conversation. I think the only part that I have an issue is, like I said again, comes back to romantic, when we're talking about supporting one another, and then we don't choose our brothers and sisters for relationship. We choose people outside of the community. So we are good enough to be friends, but not necessarily good enough to be a relationship partner. That's how it may seem like, right? And then obviously then to say, being there for one another in terms of relationship when you are at your lowest, it just seems like you're saying that the women should be there for you when you're broke, and when you're broke, finished, and you've exhausted all your options with the other races. Then come back to the black woman because she's so loyal and she's so ready to take you on board. And I think in reality, I gotta be real. That kind of thinking for me is detrimental, and it is suspect because I think for me personally, this leads into how as a race, as a community, that we don't respect our women in this case. If that's the thinking we're gonna have, if we're um if we're gonna um say choose each other at the lowest, we should that what that says is that the people for you are only there, they're only meant to be good enough for you when you need help, not when you're on a particular level. And if somebody is always there for you when you need help, then they are the help. They're nothing more than just the help. And that is really saying that they're not your level. Okay. And I'm not saying that Jeezy. I've never seen Jeezy disrespect any black woman. So I want to make very clear. I want to make that clear distinction right away. I've never heard, seen him disrespect any black woman. So I'm not advocating for that at all. What I'm saying is, though, I think there is a case to be told, because I understand, from obviously when we look at his background and we see how his mother treated him, I could see how that could make you feel some type of way about dating black women. Because if we haven't realized the pain that we're suffering from our parents, we end up not sometimes, we can be doomed to repeat it again. And also the pain that we face from rejection, the pain we feel from rejection, the pain that we feel from our bad experiences, they can bleed into our adult life and what we've experienced in relationships. So that's why I was just like a little bit like, I wonder if that's bled into how he sees relationships with black women, and that they are there for their help, because in reality they've actually injured him from young, as well. So that's the case. Didn't his father abandon him? But that's not how it works, unfortunately. You know what I mean? That's not how it works. Even though his father abandoned him, that's not how it works when it comes to when it comes to dating and how we see and how we interact with one another. Because what happens when a father isn't present, a man looks for another family to be holden to, right? So when a father isn't there, a man looks for a family to be a part of, right? He seeks for protection and coverage elsewhere from another strong entity, which is usually some form of male preference or male presence in some sense. Yeah. Tia said, stop it. His experience with his mother didn't keep him from laying with black women and creating single black mothers. Well, that's if you really take your time and really deep it, instead of just saying stop it, maybe if you had a bit of time to just kind of understand it a little bit, you might actually get some understanding here. What I was actually saying was, he can lay with someone and have a children with them because actually it's a form of hate. It's actually a form of dislike. So I can sleep with you because that's all I consider you to be, a concubine. I don't consider you to be the top prize of being a wife. And that can come from when we have pain and wounds towards opposite sex, which can begin when you have issues with your mother. So if you have issues with your mother, you can then get to a place where how you consider other black women, they then become a source of pain for you, because every time you see them, you see the mother. It's a bit like when we see things with mothers and sons, where the mother might mistreat the son because the son looks like the dad. and the mother hates the dad, so she mistreats the son. It happens. People get triggered by these kind of things. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that's necessarily 100% it. What I'm saying is it could have contributed towards that, because now he can see the black woman. Yes, he can appreciate Nia Long because he's not dating her. He can appreciate black women because he's not necessarily dating them, but he might not date them in the way that he should with intentionality to marry them, because in his head, how he sees them is, I only see you really as a concubine. I don't see you as a wife. Now, I'm not saying that's 100% that's what it is. I'm just saying maybe potentially it is. And that's how other races then get elevated in the conversation, because they didn't hurt him the same way that his mother did. So, you know what I mean? That's why I called it out when I said, why did he call he even said it about his mum, that she's spicy with her mouth. And I was like, nah, she's not spicy, she's abusive, bro. It's not spicy, it's abusive. And I think he got the same thing with you know, I think he did the same thing with with Jeannie Mai as well. But let me get Siwe on first. I know she wants to give her opinion on this as well. Okay. Siwe.
Hey everyone.
What's Gucci? Talk to me, baby. I know you got some opinions on this situation.
I don't know where to start. I guess we're starting with the Black women safe space part and maybe work our way backwards.
Let's start there. That's good.
I definitely feel like this is a rebranding for Jeezy. I don't know how many Jeezy fans are in here. Probably a lot of us. I mean, I was a huge Jeezy fan. His audience was all black people, black women, black men. Jeezy's been my favorite rapper since I can remember, right? And I definitely feel like when he tried to turn into this Jay Jenkins person, right? That he tried to go through his Jay-Z kind of turnaround, right? The rebranding there. I think Jeannie, he believed, would help him move that direction. I know we're going to get to all the reasons why probably he chose Jeannie, but I do think that was part of kind of this rebranding. I think Jeannie in many ways was a good look for him. I was not a part of the people that really had a problem with him with Jeannie, but there are a lot of people that were not a fan of him being with Jeannie. I have felt that way about other situations, but with their particular union, I don't know. It didn't completely rub me 100% the wrong way. But I think it did rub a lot of people the wrong way. And I think now that he's getting, divorced, he's trying to, him choosing Nia that doesn't interview, right? Like, as far as I know, Nia hasn't, I don't know what interview that she's done. Him choosing her, like he said in the interview, the black woman's like queen, like we all love Nia, like we all protected Nia, right? That was very intentional. That was very, very intentional. And I thought some of his words were intentional, and, just the lifting up the black women words. I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of that. I wasn't a fan of that because I believe it was pandering. And I think, unfortunately, I think a lot of people think that black women are not, they must think that we're not that smart. I don't know. Because the things that they do to pander to us, it's just really obvious. Like Jonathan Majors in this whole Megan Good thing. We love Megan Good, so you think we're going to love you? No. That's not how that works. And pandering to Nia in us, it's just, it's not going to work. And he also picks somebody who's also going through her own stuff with her own black man, right? And so she's dealing with all of that stuff, and they're over here bonding, and I'm just like, I don't know. It was clearly pandering. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It was definitely pandering.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a rebranding going on. I was confused by the Nia Long situation. I guess obviously it gets the bums on seats. I saw Nia Long and I was like, oh, but then when I actually saw the conversation, I was like, well, it doesn't feel like this is the right person for the job in terms of the conversation. Like, if it was a conversation, it wasn't a conversation because it was more of a sit down interview. right? So if it was a conversation, it would have been more of a back and forth, but it was less of a back and forth and more of her asking questions. So it didn't feel natural in the way that it flowed in terms of a conversation. If it was more of an interview kind of style, and then the interview style was a little bit harsh because of the way that the questions, the way they edited it, so it didn't look quite right. But so all of that to say, like, I just didn't think she was the right person for the job, right? But again, like you said, things are purposeful. People choose people for a particular type of reason. She is America's sweetheart when it comes to black people, and you know everybody loves Nia Long. Like even the men were cussing out Ima Edoke when he cheated the way he did. Usually the men would be like, "Well, I can see what happened. I see why you did what you did." In this case, people were on the neck of Ima Edoke. So it's like attaching yourself to Nia Long and putting an interview about your struggles, situation, what you've been through, and then kind of then at towards the end talking about how black brothers and sisters need each other, but your ass went and choose somebody else who wasn't from the black society to date. Yeah, it can make it a little bit more difficult to take that message on board, right? So it's like. And then you have a history of having black baby mothers, but not. I don't know if he's married. Has he married any of them? The black women that he's dated. So you have chosen not to marry any of them, but you decided to marry Jeannie Mae. Okay, and that is where people are gonna have an issue. Look and go, no, come on, what you trying to do? So it does feel like a rebranding, if I'm honest with you. And
it never the people who've been following Jeezy for 20 years, 15, 20 years, knew that either he has made a significant change in his life, which we found out in this interview. I don't think he really made it that far, right? Or this is an intentional rebranding. There was only two options for this marriage, because anybody who has tracked and listening to Trap or Die, all of his music knows what Jeezy went through. If you listen to his music, what he was talking about and what he went through with Nia should not have been surprising. When he said he was trapping out of his auntie house, he was really trapping out of his auntie house. Like, that's literally why people fell in love with Jeezy's music. Like, he wasn't lying about none of the stuff that went down there in Macon, Georgia, right? So if you had all of that stuff going on, unless you really elevated, like I said, the Jay-Z effect, really, really elevated and grew and healed and went to therapy, you were going to have nothing in common with Jeannie Mai. And it's not even about a race thing. It's just that you guys just weren't going to have a lot in common as far as like understanding your background. So I think a lot of us tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. We were like, okay, maybe he's elevated. Maybe Jeannie represents where he's at in life. Maybe Jeannie represents right now this Jay Jenkins, right? And she's not a come up for him. This is just, they're just meeting at the right place and right time. And it's not a slight to black women. But I think from this interview, it actually made it worse, because what I'm seeing is the fact that all of his trauma, everything he went through, stuff with his mother, that awful story he told about hiding under the sink and all this type of stuff, he doesn't seem like he's that far from that. So to me, you marrying Jeannie, were you reaching on purpose? You must have really thought that she was going to elevate you. She was an elevation. She was a come up, because in reality, you were not prepared at all. And I see a lot of people talking about, the part that Jeannie played, which we can talk about that because I think she did, but she had her own role. She has her own trauma. She has her own issues, but his lack of preparedness to me screams red flag as to why you picked this woman and not any of your child's mothers, your children's mother, or anybody else. To me, it didn't have the right effect. I think it was eye-opening. I think it was an eye-opening interview, and maybe not for the reasons that he thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think taking into account all the information, I'll take a less cynical view in terms of why they got together, right? They both have childhood trauma from a mother. Both have gone through sexual abuse. Both have had to grow up very, very quickly. Both have estranged relationships with their mothers at the time, and Obviously, his mother passed away in COVID. Hers is still alive. You know, she's from the Bay, kind of hood kind of energy. He's from the hood. You know, a situation, right? I think there's some similarities there that I can see as to how they might have started talking, started getting intimate. I think my big thing was also just I think my biggest thing was just more of a case of I guess with Jeannie Mai, also the fact that as much as there were similarities, I was wondering what the decision was to date somebody outside your race, where it might have been coming from, because clearly your history is Black women. So to make a sudden shift was quite intriguing, right? That I think that's my thing, because this is not somebody who's short of access to women. So again, this is not even like the story of the guy who doesn't get girls and then ends up with a white woman. This is somebody who gets women, has access to women, and previously dated Black women. I was wondering what the situation was, right? And so, I think that was also interesting. So getting to hear his story, I kind of understood it a bit better. I think also with Jeezy situation as well, I think clearly, I think clearly the conversation with Nia had some marketing employed to it, right? Because Black women are going to now watch it, right? They're going to watch it because they want to know about his divorce, but they're also going to see that Nia Long's there. That's a hook. And, I think even when I was listening to it, I can't even lie to you, right? I think I can't even lie to you. I think the part that got me is listening to Jeezy, and maybe it's always edited, and maybe I'm reaching and I'm being too metaphorical about it, right? And so I want to put that disclaimer. But it felt like it did feel a bit like, I guess is what we're talking about today, is when when you're a guy and you have a lot of demons you're fighting, and you get your girl, and your girl is the one that becomes your therapist. And then you start offloading everything. That's what it felt like. So in the conversation, it didn't feel like somebody who had dealt with all the trauma that they're dealing with, like in terms of unpacking it. It felt like, it almost felt, and I know it's not, but it felt like it was almost the first time he's kind of unpacked it all onto someone. And then that one person is a Black woman. And it could have just been, again, this could have just been, this just could have been, this could have been, I guess, me being looking too deep into it, but it almost felt like he was just dumping all the trauma on her, because unlike people who have actually gone through the work, the way they explain it, they unpack it. So when they're giving it to somebody else, it's not so raw and so dense, but it felt so raw and so dense, and then it's dumped onto someone who's meant to be interviewing him, and that person also then became the Black woman. So it's like metaphorically, it almost felt like, what, you're now doing the very thing we're saying you shouldn't be doing, which is making Black women the rehabilitation center. And that's what I'm saying metaphorically, what I was kind of seeing. Doesn't mean necessarily that's what it was. Yeah.
No, I think that was 100% what it was. And I think we've seen this a lot in dating shows and stuff that we watched, where non-Black women get the light version of Black men. They get the whirlwind romance. They get this and that, right? But they don't get the real, because that's not necessarily where a lot of Black men feel the most comfortable. And then they get in front of a Black woman where they feel the most safe and the most comfortable, and then they're dumping. And so, no, I don't think you're wrong about that at all. What I took away from the interview is that no couples therapy would have worked between Jeannie and Jeezy, because in their particular situation, Jeezy needs true individual therapy that would take time. And you can't sometimes do that while you're also doing couples therapy. I think some of the stuff that he had to work through was individualistic. The stuff, his process, the way he detaches from people that he cares about, all of the people that he's seen come and go, And I was talking about this with my husband, and just talking about like my family members who didn't grow up necessarily like me, and they grew up in the South Side, and how many people that they have seen unfortunately die, right? And the way they interact with people is not the way I interact with people. Everyone is transient. Everyone can be here today, gone tomorrow, right? You don't feel the need to stick around and work it out with people because life has been just such a crazy, chaotic place. What I took from Jeezy is that even the way he dealt with his own mother's death is that although he has some traits where he keeps people around maybe too long, or he has some toxic attachment styles, what I also got from him is that because of what he's been through, he doesn't feel the need, or he doesn't know how to stick around and work out relationships because of the way relationships have been in his life. The relationships probably with his children that I don't even think he talks to like that. His children's mother, his mother, the family members. So you cannot enter into a marriage where your number one job is to show up every single day and work things out every single day. And if you have had zero practice with sticking around and working things out every single day, you are not prepared to be married. It doesn't matter what Jeannie came with. Jeannie came with stuff. But what I do know is I believe that she was prepared to work it out with him and work through some of her, let's say everything is true, right? She can't be led. She talks back. She got all the family members in the house. She doing this and that. What I believe in my heart is that she was prepared to go through that with him, right? I don't believe he knows how to do that. And I think that comes from sometimes when you're with each other for some superficial reason. Because I've thought about this. I think Jeannie and Jeezy got together, had a whirlwind romance, and got married throughout this whirlwind romance phase based on things that probably weren't as deep as they needed to go. And then when things got real, I'm not sure that because of the cultural differences, that Jeannie was the easiest person for Jeezy to relate to and to dump the things that he kind of dumped on Nia. I wonder how transparent and vulnerable he was, and I wonder vice versa, was Jeannie able to relate to him? I'm not sure. But I don't think a lot of people understand that if you do not have basic conflict resolution skills, and I mean like learning how to work things out with people, and you can practice that with your mother, your father, your siblings, your friends. I know we're going to talk about that in a later live about us working through disagreements and things that we've gone through. There's so many times we can be like, hey, you're across the pond, Sean's in New York, Jay's in LA. I ain't got to talk to these people no more. That's easy. But you have to work through things if people matter to you. And I think a lot of times people do not know how to work through things, and then they want to get married in a whirlwind romance and think that's going to work. No. Marriage is showing up every single day. And saying, you done got on my nerves. I have my issues that I came with. You have your issues that you came with. Let's try to work with it together. If it's not a couple's problem, you go work through that crap over there. I'm going to go work through this over here, and we're going to try again every day. And he did not, I don't believe he did that. And I think for that was not fair to Jeannie. That was not fair. I'm not saying she's a victim, but I'm saying that part. Everyone had a part, but that part. Because when you stand up on that altar, and maybe it's her fault that she didn't know that he wasn't prepared. I'm not sure. But when you stand up there on that altar, you are really making a commitment to at least work things out. At least try to process through and not run. And I don't know if he has maybe he didn't have the capacity to do that. So it doesn't matter. Maybe the capacity is lacking. So we just should all but yeah.
So I'll give not a pushback. I'll give an addition to say I want to be fair to also Jeezy and say that whilst I do believe he's rebranding, and I do believe he's there's a lot of pandering that he's doing as well at the moment, I would say in regards to himself and to himself and Jeannie, I think that he might have wanted to exit early. But I think because he saw some signs that he knew he couldn't deal with. Now, this should have been dealt with before they got married, personally, right? I personally think he should have dealt with this before they got married, because you would have seen some signs. But I think Jeezy got into a relationship with Jeannie Mai, liked her spiciness, liked her, a little bit of energy that she gave, etc., right? But when it got into the marriage and there was now no place to run, it actually highlights the person's behavior becomes magnified, right? Because now there's no exit door. And so whereas beforehand you were saying to yourself, I could deal with it, in the marriage you're like, whoa, there's nowhere to run. I can't, this ain't it, right? And so for me personally, from a leadership standpoint, I would say that that's where he has to take accountability in terms of the continuing his choice of being with someone like Jeannie Mai, who was exhibiting behaviors that he had quite eloquently laid out in that interview that his mother would do. It's giving Tyrese with Samantha all over again, where you're choosing someone who has similar traits to your mother, which you've seen, and you continue the relationship forward, even though you're seeing some negative traits. So I would say that's where I would say for Jeezy, I can hold him there. What I would also say is that I think that Jeannie Mai also has a huge problem. And I think that you can't go from disrespecting your ex-husband for so long and then think that now you're going to respect this man that you're in a relationship with. And this is why I always say about this whole mythology that everyone, when they get the right type of man, they're going to suddenly become this great woman. You're not, because you've practiced a certain behavior for so long. It takes time to bring a change to where you need to be. And I always talk about this, where I say the patience versus the person's change curve is very, if the patience runs out before the person's growth gets to where it needs to be, the relationship comes to a crash. So it's, for me personally, looking at Jeannie Mai as well, I look at her also and say, that in regards to the situation with Jeezy, that she presented certain things that I saw, and I was like, yeah, now him confirming it, saying about the leadership. Well, you kind of would have known the leadership was an issue because she mentioned it in the interview, and I saw it, and I'm like, well, you dated her, so you would have seen that this woman, although she says she can take direction, that she can't take your direction. Like because the person fights you on little things, right? And those little things you're saying to yourself, well, they're gonna change, she's gonna be different. And I've said this on a live before. I've said this. There are certain women when I interact with them, they immediately give you the reins they give you the keys and the reins to the horse and cart. There are other women, when you encounter them, you are beefing them straight away about the horse and the cart. So so you should know what's going to work for you. And I feel like Jeezy just kind of ignored some of those things, and rather than actually being truthful about what he actually was seeing as well going forward. But yeah, go for it, Siwe. Before I see Sean and Aries are behind there, but go for it, Siwe.
I think then we're gonna go back to the beginning then. If she showed all of these traits, there's only a couple of things that could be true. You either had some overpowering reason to look past things that she showed ahead of time. So what could that be? What were your reasons for seriously looking past all of these things that is allegedly wrong with her, and you still married her? Like someone said in the comments, still pursued IVF, still did all of these things, right? And then let's say she showed no signs. Well, then let's just go back to what I said previously again. You cannot marry people in the honeymoon stage, because guess what? You marry people in your whirlwind romance stage, y'all get married, and then you're going to start seeing stuff, and you're going to get that pit in your chest. Like you were talking about, oh, you think you're claustrophobic in an elevator? You're real claustrophobic when you realize you done married somebody that's showing some signs of some stuff, and you're just like, oh my God. Like, oh my God. I am married to somebody and ain't no way out, bro. Ain't no way.
I'm stuck.
And I think a lot of people go through that, even if it's not huge things. I think a lot of married people will tell you there's a moment where you're sitting there like, oh wait, so I can't just tell you to get the hell on? Like it's me and you? Like I can't just get to, I can't be a runner and a track star. I mean, because I used to have the gift of goodbye. I ain't no long sufferer. I'm a big sag, big walk away if I need to. That's what I used to. But when you're married, that you can't boast. You can't do that. It's a change. It's a change.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not. They're not willing. They're not willing to do. So I know they're coming. So
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I got my awesome foursome here. Aries and Sean, welcome to the conversation. Me and Siwa were just chopping it up. And I love the fact that
Elo was preaching.
yeah. Siwa was going in, man. Siwa was telling us some truths, man. You know what I mean? And I always forget whenever I have one to one with Siwa, it's always it's a vibe. Yeah, no, I would love to hear you guys' perspective, of course, as well on the Jeezy situation and how you guys saw it from your perspective. I'll let Aries go first, and then Sean, you can hit up with something as well. Talk to me.
I just, that one line, and you keep repeating it. I'm like, it just angers me every time with the, go to our sisters at our lowest point. That one just like triggers me. But I will say, just kind of from a different perspective, because I come from a similar background that he comes from. So when Seaway was doing her preaching, I was like, because I'll be gone. I was like, kind of on what Nia Long was saying, like, I will be out. Like, when you're in that kind of situation, or you come from a background where you didn't have a lot of choice in your environment and you had to endure things that were hard, you, in your life where you can choose, you're not about to stay for a long time if something started getting weird, So I kind of get that part of it, and I've been married, I've been divorced. I had that moment where I'm like, oh hell, I didn't marry somebody. I can't just get the hell out of here. Like, it's gonna take a lot more than just walking away. I think that, and I'm not a Jeezy fan. I mean, like, I've been to one Jeezy concert on accident. I'm not like a person who buys his music or does any of that. So I'm familiar with his music and stuff like that, but I'm not like a diehard Jeezy fan where I'm like, I know all his life story. So for me, the interview was more informational about his background when it comes to that. But I do think that I did see Jeannie Mai's interviews and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that when you see those triggers, it is hard. It is definitely hard. I feel like he might have gone through therapy and things like that. It seems like he has a interesting viewpoint on things. He's trying to work through the rationale behind his little whatever. But I also think he's selling a book right now. So he is on a press tour. And like some people were saying in the chat earlier, like, he picked Nia Long on purpose. Like, he knows we love the hell out of Nia Long, and she basically can almost do no wrong in our eyes as a Black woman. She's like that one that's like, don't you say nothing about no Nia Long now, So having her on his side was like, just that little cherry on top for some people. But I still think that, yeah, he's on his Jada tour. Basically, he's trying to bring us back over to his side. But the last couple of people that he dated, even before Jeannie Mai, like, wasn't he with like Khloe Kardashian at one point? Like, it's been kind of on a non-Black track for a while. So it's not like she was the first one, but also, and I am one of those people who, I'm not a Cynthia G person, but I do get a little cringy when it comes to certain Black men when they date, outside of their race, because a lot of times the energy, if you love someone, I'm here for love and all that, but a lot of times there's this energy anti-Black woman. That's what I usually am going for. So like, even during the show on Ready to Love, right? When I walked in and I saw Phil had this lady who was not Black, I was like, okay. Like, after I had to ask the question, I asked him, I'm like, so did you start dating non-Black people after the marriage? After the divorce? Because I know that your wife was a beautiful Black woman. Like, I want to know, is this an anti-Black? Are you going against something because of what you went through? And now you're like anti? Like, I need to understand what your viewpoint is. So I feel like with Jeezy, and I don't know if he's trying to, this is just for the book, but you know, bring us back on his side, because I feel like there definitely was conversations around the submissiveness and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not 100% convinced, but I do get the part about the perspective of like someone who has been through a hard life and hasn't really quite grasped how to love, how to be vulnerable, how to really, like, he still seems like he still needs to continue to dig and learn more in that area. Unfortunately, he is, you know, ending a marriage in order to do that. I don't know if they were able to, you know, how, if it's able to be rekindled or whatever, but it sounds like he's kind of like, F it, I'm out of here. So yeah, so I just felt like, you know, again, we come to the, let's come on back to Black women. And I don't like that message, because we're already trying to be like, we tired. We've been saying we tired for a long time. We don't want to be the, you know, soft place to land, when now that, you know, you see that the grass wasn't greener, and now you're trying to come back on this side. Like, no, stay back over there where you were. Whatever. So that's just my kind of general statement on that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Aries. Appreciate it. Sean, talk to me, brother.
What's going on, good people?
Hey, Sean.
What's good, Sean?
Hello.
Not you still in Jamaica.
Listen, figuratively, yes, I am still there.
Figurative, yeah.
So yeah, no, I mean, I think some, you know, I heard a little bit of the conversation before I came on, and then you know, I was able to hear some of the sentiments, you know, while I, you know, was just getting on. But I agree with some, you know, the sentiment of, now we're going to do this press tour where, you know, he's leveraging Nia Long, and, you know, kind of going to have her be a sympathizer. So I really don't understand that. I don't know enough to know about Jeezy to know in his, you know, in his YouTube channel if he's done anything with her before, but I just kind of like, why would you leverage her to kind of be the person to do this interview and then have this conversation, especially with, you know, her very recent public issue with I don't know if they were married or whatever, but, you know, her ex-fiance, ex-husband, whatever, you know, seeming, it's like, are you trying to draw a comparison without saying something? Like, what's the, what is the reason, is what I'm interested in. And then, you know, for me, it's like, don't come on and say, oh, I'm not going to say, but then you're going to say a little bit. That kind of annoys me. Either keep quiet or tell your story. And I'm not saying I want him to badmouth Jeannie Mai or speak ill of her, but if you're going to just kind of give middle of the road answers and kind of not really say why it happened, then why are we talking about it? Why is it framed in the sense of like you needed to forgive her for something? So I just would rather him just come out with it or don't say anything at all. So those are kind of my questions about that. And the one thing that kind of stood out to me is when Nia had asked him if they had done therapy, if they had tried, and he said, yes, we did. And I'm like, okay, well, you guys were married for a hot second. So therapy is one of those things. And in my previous marriage, we did couples counseling. It's not 6 months. You don't go into a therapy environment and you're going to get a quick answer and you're going to get a resolve and really say you've tried. It's in a lot of instances, depending on what the issues are, it can take years. So I just wish I heard a little bit more self-reflection from him. Like, hey, listen, although I wish we could have given it a shot, we just came to the conclusion that we're two people that weren't meant to be together, and not come to a position where we have to like feel like it almost appears like, or he's inferring that he was wronged in some kind of way.
Yeah. And I think I think, you know, with their situation too, I do feel like, you know, I feel like with the situation with Jeezy, and not even with just necessarily just Jeannie May, but he made a comment which was quite interesting to me. He said about he felt like it, you know, it's his time to put himself first, you know. And when we hear that, I ain't gonna lie to you, it was giving me, you know, is it Tamira? It was giving Tia. Sorry, is it Tia? Which one's one that's divorced? Tia, isn't it? Tia's the one that's divorced. It was giving Tia graduating from her marriage. Okay, when you start hearing that, you know, when I start hearing that, I start getting a little bit, you know what I mean? Himself, Tia, there's a few other people who do the same thing. They divorce and then they start making this kind of comment. And his one was like, well, you know, God wanted me to walk on my solo. I'm like, God wanted you to walk solo? God, what do you mean God wanted you to walk solo? Why did God want you to walk solo? Just say that you believe that this wasn't the right relationship for you. You made a mistake. You chose wrong. You know, you put the onus on you. But when people start framing it in a particular way, that as if like, you know, God wanted to orchestrate a moment for him to leave the relationship so he can walk in his purpose now and walk in his solo thing. It's like, nah, Negro. Just same way I said the same nah about Tia is the same thing I'm saying here. It's a fast, and then we use God as the escape route to say that I need to be out of the situation. The other person who did it also too was Nikki. Nikki and what do you call it? What, the white boy? Sorry, Jamie. Nick and Jamie. Same thing. She said, you know, I had a dream that God told me I'm gonna be here. Yeah, but he didn't tell us that you were out here abusing the young man. So okay, so you just telling us half the truth, but not telling the full truth. And when people start using other things external about why they left, usually, yeah, they're capping. Usually, it means they're unwilling to take the responsibility for their actual actions, in that particular aspect. So I heard him say that, and I was a little bit like, okay, okay, you know what I mean? But yes, anyway, jump back in for me. You know, I know we've kind of hit a few points and stuff, but feel free to take it anywhere you want to take it, because I know you had a few different points you wanted to touch on today as well.
I feel like we're working our way around to it. I don't know if you want my comment on
Go for it.
The God thing. I just think a lot of time, I'm a preacher's kid, PK, for y'all start coming for me. But I think a lot of people, I believe God is my Lord and Savior, died on the cross for my sins, all of that. I just feel like a lot of times people just, they don't know what to say, so they just be throwing, they need to find a purpose for the chaos. So they just start throwing that into it, you know. And really, they neither consulted with God, talked to him, nor did he tell them to do any of the crap that they're doing right now. So I don't know, but he had to find something to say to walk away from his family. How many families has he walked away from at this point?
That's a fair point.
I honestly didn't give a F when he chose Jeannie. Let me tell you why. I didn't think he was going to do right to begin with. It didn't feel right in my spirit. So I didn't think he was going to do right no way. So I don't be, you know, fighting for my life for black men to be choosing black women to do, as Cynthia G says, that same black man crap. So honestly, yeah, guys, I'm a preacher's kid. I don't talk about that much. Actually, I'm not the Bible thumper on the panel. I feel like we got some other Bible thumpers. I'm the worst preacher's kid anyway, of all time. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know where he got that. I don't know where he got that from, but I don't think God told him to walk away from his family. God probably was telling him to face his demons and go to therapy. Because he stood up in front of God and made a vow and made promises. And he stood in front of that lady, looking Scrappy's daughter's words. He stood in front of that lady. And I don't know. Y'all want to know what a Bible thumper is? I'm not explaining that. I'm not gonna explain it. You go ahead, Sean. You got something to say?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I gotta disagree with you just slightly there. As somebody that sought counsel, sought God, and God could have very well told him to be out that marriage now, because it just wasn't meant for him to be in, and there was not going to be any good for him because he was continuing his issues, right? You know, and he so clearly stated he had issues growing up as a child with his mother, and he just repeated the cycle. So it's not healthy for him to be in that situation. So I can definitely attest to the fact that God will tell you to get out of a situation. And although God is not happy about divorce, it is in a lot of ways necessary for you to move on from that person. And you know, I don't necessarily agree with the tactics. I don't agree with how he's going about it. He probably should have never entered into it. However, I mean, it can very well be a reality. You know, now that's his truth per se, as we say. So I don't necessarily have contention with him saying that, but I don't agree with him like kind of pedestalizing himself in reference to her.
You know, Aries, you want to jump in there? You want to? This is sound close. Yeah, go on.
Well, no, yeah, because I'll be divorcing people, so that's just. And I don't think that God says go divorce. Like I definitely, and you know, I don't, not in my case at least. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that part. I do think that he permits it. You know, he'll permit it, obviously, and that it will be, you know, he can still bless you and your life and things like that. But I think he just wanted out. Like he just wanted out. We don't know exactly what was going on behind closed doors. I think there's a lot of rumors about, you know, her family and all this stuff. It seems, I mean, Jeannie Mai is the personality that I never really got with. Like, I didn't see what he saw in the first place, but I don't know her personally. But just her public persona was pretty annoying to me. But again, he could be annoying as well. But I think that he just, you know, you had people breaking up during COVID, you had people getting together during COVID. So I think you never, you know, it could be back to what Seaway said earlier about the honeymoon phase. You thought it was going to be, you know, this great thing. And then you realize that it wasn't. And it could totally have been the family situation with all the people living in the house and blah, 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 and all that. But going back to what I said about when you kind of come from a certain background, like I think your patience level is just not there, you know, as much as maybe somebody else's who would stick it out and hold on to the end and all that stuff. Like it's not the same mentality. So not that he's right, but I think that based on the circumstances, I can see the runner track star part of, you know, him getting out, you know, and wanting to get out. So I get that part.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think in this situation, you know, I guess the wording God told me to divorce is what's always quite interesting, isn't it? Right. I think that's always the interesting aspect when it comes to the situation. I think I better like the word God permits, which is God allows. You know, I think, and that's not to say that, you know, God, I think oftentimes well, let me talk about this Jesus situation specifically, right? I think sometimes what can happen is that, you know, I always say that the spiritual and the physical must marry. There must be spiritual and physical. You know, I always quote the scripture, Luke 2:52, where it talks about Jesus grew in stature and in wisdom and in favor amongst men. And what that always signified to me was spiritually we can be grown, but you have to grow in the things of the world. You have to understand how relationships work. There are mighty men in the spiritual realm who ruin their relationships and their marriage because they thought they were Moses. Okay, they went to the mountain for 40 days and thought their wife should just stay at home for 40 days. And we got tarot readers now because someone decided to, because we mentioned Jesus. But you know, there's people out here who, you know, will do the most in the kingdom and forget their first ministry is their marriage. What that means, what that says to me is that marriage is something that God has given us as a tool and as a outward expression of what he has done for us. And so people forget that requires another level of work. So that in itself requires a maturity. And we're in a generation now where we are seeing marriages in a space where we have to put a lot of work in. You know, I always say this, that we're in a place where we can thrive and not survive. And when you survive, there's very little you need to do except for survive. But when things can thrive, there are far more luxury options that open up to people. And that's what actually makes a relationship harder, because now it's like that bare minimum that either of us were doing for each other no longer is enough to maintain the relationship. And I think had Jeezy been in 1940, 1930, he'd still be married. Okay? He would have married one of his baby mothers and he'd be still married, right? But we're not in that generation. Now we get to do things and be wild and go out and do whatever we want to do. And I think why I was harping on him specifically is because it was like, whenever I hear that God said I should, I'm like, did he say you should? Or is it the fact that God is allowing you to make a move out of that situation? That doesn't mean that, I'm not saying that God is happy with that situation or whether he wants you, but I'm saying that, is it God told you to move out of that situation? Or is God allowing you to exit that situation? You know what I mean? I think the two are very different. It's almost like when it quotes in scripture saying, don't ever say God tempted you, right? But God doesn't tempt people, right? But he will allow for the temptation to take place. So it's that key wording that makes a big difference. And when he said, God allowed me, God was, basically telling him to walk and to choose himself. I was like, no, you got some understanding about yourself and you realize I need to choose myself. So just be honest. Don't place it on God and make it this far thing. Take the responsibility of your choice that you've made, and be accountable for it. Because if you can't, you're going to do it again. It's, you know what I mean? And my final point on this is, because that language is the same language that someone says, the devil made me do it. And it's like, no, the devil didn't make you do it, darling. You did that. Okay. All right. You chose to do that. You had a choice and you chose that path. And so I'm just looking for that little bit more accountability from Jeezy, to say that, you know what, I've chosen this path because I believe that this is the right path for me to take because of what I saw. And then I can go, the brother took accountability. He said that that's why he's doing it, because he saw what he saw. Hey, who am I? But if you throw it into God, I'm going to look at you some way,
Because he talks about like protecting his younger self and all that stuff, so I feel like, whatever he saw in Jeannie that he felt like, I can't continue to grow and whatever in this situation, maybe it was, triggered by him still feeling like he can't, protect, what did he call it?
The little man, the little
yeah, right. So it's like, you weren't able to stand up for yourself. You were in this survival mode or whatever, and now you are discovering all the answers. Once you actually start doing the work of like trying to heal yourself or whatever, you're gonna start see those patterns of connecting your childhood to your adulthood and decisions you made and blah 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 blah. If there's for whatever reason he feeling like he couldn't continue forward, and I'm with you on it as far as like, I don't think that God is going to tell you to do that. But I do think that if you feel like, I don't want to put in as much work as I know it's going to take for me to actually overcome all of this with this person, it's going to be way more work than you easily will just find another excuse to get out of the situation. It's just like, I'm just going to go start over. Now that I've got this new discovery, I'm going to start over, and then I'll just get another new family over here that I'll start. Let me get my Black women back on my side, and I can do this with a Black woman now because, my mommy issues I feel like I've come to grips with my mommy issues, and now I can go back to the Black woman. And it's like, nah, stay over there. Stay over there.
Fair point. Sean, maybe you have a different take?
Yeah, I actually do. And again, I just want to be clear that I'm not agreeing to the way he's executing what he's saying, and I'm also not, similarly, I said I want him to take accountability for his actions and his role in what led up to the dissolution of their marriage. But I would definitely push back to say that God can absolutely, and I don't know his relationship with God, so I'm not going to pretend to speak on that or say what God did or didn't say to him. But I do know for my own self that God absolutely told me, and I would even say freed me from the guilt that also comes along with a Christian person being a believer, but he most definitely told me that it was okay to divorce. And actually in more ways than not, more ways than one, showed me why it was not beneficial for me to be in that marriage, because ultimately God wants us to be seekers of a relationship with him, and any person or situation that can get in the way of that puts us in further distance from God. And I know from my own self who I was becoming, and the way that I was acting out and dealing with conflict in my marriage was putting me further and further away from God. So I just think we just need to be careful before we say what God did or didn't say to somebody. And then also the point, and I saw this, I also saw this in the comments about it's not in the scripture. We also know that Christ came to fulfill the law, right?
Yeah.
So the Holy Spirit is Christ and God speaking in and living inside of us. So it is beyond the scriptural text, but there is a spiritual component where our relationship with God will give us visions, will give us a word, will show us through a variety of ways into which God wants us to do. Now, ultimately, it is our choice. It was my choice and my ex-wife's choice to move forward and get a divorce. So it wasn't God that made it happen. Right? So we're the two individuals that own the accountability. It is our actions that caused the actual divorce to happen, just the same way it was our actions that started the marriage. But I most certainly can attest to that. And I also sought the counsel of my pastor, right? So in seeking the counsel of my pastor and talking that through, and us dissecting the situations, us looking at the details and the innermost intimate details of my marriage, and looking at scripture, we got to the same page. So listen, I'm not talking about what Jeezy did. I'm not going to pretend like he did all those things or did or didn't or did whatever. I'm just saying that we cannot just so quickly dismiss it and say, well, the Bible doesn't say that, right? Yeah, the Bible doesn't say a lot of things, but the Bible also leaves room for our relationship with God and that one-on-one intimate component, and for him to reveal things to us in a variety of ways. And his ways are not our ways, right? So before we think that we're so quick to be able to read the scripture and dissect it and say what it's going to be and how it's going to show up for another person, I just want us to back up a little bit, because his ways are higher than ours, right? So what we can compute, what we can actually understand and dissect and be like, okay, that makes sense for me, God's ways are higher than that, right? So in so many situations, it supersedes our very human understanding and the way we see emotions and the filters that we see our lives through. So that's the only thing I just want to kind of push back on, is saying before we can step out and say what God said or didn't say for another person, it's the same way that we can't condemn another person to hell, right? We can talk about their actions and make assessments and say, hey, listen, what you're doing is sinful, right? But we can't condemn them to hell, because God is the one that does that.
So I want to stand with you on that, right? So I don't think we're saying anything too different to what we're saying, right? I think it's the wording that I'm focusing on, right? Because I think you even kind of said it in the wording, which is, and that's why I'm saying I don't think God is telling you to leave. I think you're saying, what you're saying is God is okay with the decision that you made. He's given grace for the decision you've made. That's completely different. The two are actually really different. One is saying that God told me to leave. So God has given me a direction and an instruction. Go forth, go. That's completely different to saying I'm making a decision and God is saying it's okay. I've freed you from the guilt. There's no shame. There's no embarrassment here. I've given grace for this decision. That's completely different. That's you making a choice and God saying he's cool with the choice that you've made. Why I'm saying that there's a difference between someone saying God has told me and instructed me I should leave. That is now a different scenario, which I don't believe in this situation is happening. And I felt like what Jesus was kind of almost saying, which I've heard some people say, is like, well, God told me to leave. And it's like you took all the accountability away from yourself and put it on God, so that if it fails, you can say, well, God told me to leave. So why am I getting blamed? No. Take accountability, because when you made a choice, you were the one who made a choice. You made a choice to enter, and you also make a choice to leave. But I'm not. But where I'm standing with you, Sean, also is saying that, and that's why I said your wording was correct in the beginning when you said it, which was when you prayed about it and went for counsel. You didn't feel that guilt. Why? Because God has said, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm saying I'm giving you grace for the decision you're making. So this wasn't necessarily saying about if it's right or wrong in terms of making. It's about saying what choice are you making, and then that's a choice that you've made. So you be accountable for that. You can ask God for the grace for making that decision, but ultimately it's now your decision, and you're accountable for that decision. It's not on God; it's on me. You know what I mean? So that's what I was saying. I'm standing with you. I'm saying I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying just that it's the wording that I was making. I was being a bit, touchy on a bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to reply back to that, Sean, because we was having that dialogue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that aspect, and that's what I just wanted to be made clear. Again, I don't know the ins and outs of his situation, but I still do stand that God can tell someone to leave a marriage. Absolutely, I stand on that. Now, whether he did that for Jeezy or not, that's between him and God, right? And the way that it's being colored and the way that he's telling the story, I'm not with that, because it's like he's stepping aside and removing himself from it. But I do stand and in the thought that could happen. Now, whether it was for him, hey, that's on him and God.
Hey, look, I like it. Any other thoughts, ladies? You want to jump back in? Any other thoughts? See what I haven't heard from you in a while. Go for it.
Yeah, I think this is just a touchy subject.
Always is.
Yeah, this is a touchy subject. But I think you took the words out of my mouth. I think God gives us free will. We're kind of like The Sims. That's my favorite game. Like we're given direction, but at the end of the day, we have a lot of free will with what we do. And a lot of times, he gives, like you said, grace for our decisions, and he will cover our decisions. That's the reason why he died on the cross for our sins. So, maybe the issue maybe could have been not just him leaving the marriage. It could have been entering into it. I think Grace Mercy Save said that sometimes you can enter a marriage hastily, right? And that may not be of God. And so then when it's time for you to get out of it, God is going to give you grace to maybe perhaps get out of it, because you really shouldn't have been there to begin with. I mean,
yeah,
it's not for us to say, it's not for us to call out. But I to your point, Kojo, I think the problem with putting things on what God told you to do, and it's not just about marriage, it's about lots of things in life. If that's the first thing that you say, I think it kind of stops you in your tracks from evaluating your part, the other person's part, your damage, the other person's damage. And that's the place where I push back. But to Sean's point, we don't know what God told who, when, what, where, why. Honestly, sometimes people think God talking to them and God ain't said nothing. And then the other time, God has been banging on your door and you're not listening. I mean, I frankly don't know. I wasn't there. But the way he threw it out there just seems like, sir, I would just prefer that he talked about all of the other things that he learned and he gathered than saying that God told him to leave. Because I really wonder, was he talking to God when he stood up in front of that lady and the pastor, whoever, and started this, this whole thing. But I recognize it's a touchy subject, and I know most people do not get in or out of marriages lightly.
Of course.
And no one wants to feel like they're damned to hell if they get a divorce. I don't feel that way. I feel like it's like all the other things that we do in life that comes with good and bad. But yeah, I just personally, I wasn't a fan of that kind of blanket statement. God told me to leave my family and newborn. I don't know. It just didn't feel good, to be honest. It didn't feel good, and I didn't like it. So
I hear that. I like that point too. You know what I mean? And just to make it very clear, again, this is not condemning anyone to hell, people. That's what. Please don't be condemning anybody to hell. That's not what we're saying at all. It's a healthy debate about what we feel like God might or might not say. And to be honest, I could be wrong. Sean could be wrong. We could both be right. You know what I mean? There's a plethora of possibilities. So I want to make that very clear for anybody watching on the replay. As well, just in case no one's going.
They'll get in the comments. They'll get in the
yeah. I don't want to get hurt, but we're not condemning anyone to hell.
No.
You divorcing someone is not sending you to hell. Okay, all right. You're not having Jesus go and take you to hell though. Okay, real fast.
Sometimes you got to get the hell on. And if you got to get the hell on, you got to get the hell on.
And that is true. And that's why I said I agree with Jeezy. That's why I wanted Jesus to take accountability for what he did. Because if you're telling me that the relationship was bad and the relationship is wrong, then I'm saying that take accountability for that. Don't put it on anyone else. You know what I mean? Just say, hey, it's a wrong relationship. I saw things myself that I know for me that weren't going to work. Then you go forward. You know what I mean? And then that shows me that because I think for me personally, it's a case of, and I think Sean, we discussed this last time on a few lives back, actually. Well, Sean got flamed for it, but putting too many things on the spiritual, right? Putting way too many things on the spiritual and forgetting that you have to live your life. You have to live it. You have to be able to be accountable for decisions you're making. And so that's what I'm saying, in that if Jesus kind of putting it on God, is like, are you actually learning? Because you're going to therapy, I'm presuming, and the therapist, I hope it's not one of those the Jesus therapists. There's some therapists out there that will give you Bible but not give you any therapy at all. Okay, all right. I hope it's a proper therapist that's going to be able to instruct you and really be able to explain some of the behaviors and where it's coming from, because it's almost like saying, and I'll let someone else jump in after this. It's almost like saying, I'm going to pray the situation away, and it's like God is looking at you like, my friend, if you could just look at your behaviors, okay, this one don't need prayer. Okay, this one not going to come out by fasting and praying. It's going to come out by you reading, get some knowledge, and learning that your behaviors are off, and the way you're treating your partner is causing the other person to react in a certain way. That's what I wanted to hear from Jeezy. If you know what I mean, I'm not saying that he might have gone through abuse. I don't know what he's gone through, but I would have preferred him to have gone down that lane where he says, I'm gonna take accountability for what I'm seeing and what I'm choosing to do. You know what I mean? Jump for it. Go for it, Aries.
I was gonna say, kind of piggybacking right off you alley-ooped it up, because it felt like he was trying to use Nia Long as a therapist in that moment. And I'm like, I hope that ain't the kind of therapist you actually have either. And I love me some Nia. I actually enjoyed the conversation overall. But I think that self-awareness is key, right? Where, again, I joke and be like, I be leaving people, but I've been divorced for 10 years now because I really started doing the work, and I can pinpoint the areas in those marriages where, okay, I should not have done this. I didn't, do this right. And these are ways that I've corrected that behavior. So I think if you don't put the work in on yourself to actually see it and be able to call it out, it ain't gonna matter. He'll be in the next thing doing the same thing. It's gonna continue to be that same stuff. And then we'll be talking about, meditation, and I did all this stuff, and it's like, it still doesn't help if you're not addressing the real issues, and no, it's not you coming back to Black women and at your lowest points. It is you sitting with yourself at your lowest points and saying, okay, now I am the common denominator here. What do I need to do? If I can tell the story about my mom and all the stuff with my family, how is that showing up in my life today? Why do I keep running? Why do I keep getting into situations like this? When I'm in the honeymoon phase, I need to be more aware that I'm in my emotions or whatever it is that makes me make these quick decisions. And so I think that, again, I know that he's selling a book, so I really do think that a lot of this is for that publicity and to get people interested in his story. But overall, I'm like, if you're not fixing the stuff, it is not going to matter. And I don't know if he's there. I don't think he's there yet based on this conversation. I think it was it was a good conversation to have. I think it was a start of a conversation just as a culture that we can start having. I don't know if it's one that's gonna produce, anything for Jeezy, but I think that he definitely needs to continue to deep dive more on, his areas of accountability in order to, move forward. So,
Honestly, from the interview, I was more interested in kind of, I think, areas what you were saying, just like his story about how people walking around who have dealt with so much trauma and live and grew up in these either impoverished or gang-ridden areas, and how they look okay now, but the way they're showing up in society still carries a lot of damage and trauma. I was actually more invested in that conversation because I think a lot of people who grew up like that and went through that, they seem like they're okay and they're entering into stuff they're not supposed to be entering in. And really, when you start unpeeling the layers, they're not okay. And there's been lots of studies about people who grow up under that type of stress and trauma. They're literally dealing with post-traumatic stress. I think G Herbo talks a lot about that, right? Seeing all these people die and dealing with all this stuff, like these people are living in a war. It's really like a war zone, and you're not okay after that. And I think if he talks more about that and his stress with that, I think that is a really good story because, desensitized. Yeah, what Jay was saying. I think sometimes we're desensitized to what people go through growing up under those conditions and seeing that, and they can't possibly be okay, so I definitely took that away. I was going to say something else, but that just took me on a completely different path. But yeah, I wish he would tell more of that story. I also do agree that this is for his book. And I hope in his process of selling his book, he doesn't wreak more havoc than necessary. Because I think everything was kind of calm, and then he started doing all these interviews and stuff like that. And I don't know. I don't see how anybody benefits from it. So I was going to say something else, but when y'all start talking, I'll remember because I don't remember.
I was going to go back to what you just said about the trauma thing. Because again, like I grew up with that. So, and I definitely have some post-traumatic stress things that are in my life, which is why I'm very, I've been in therapy for years. I'm very consistent with that. I talk through these things a lot. Like I'm trying to work through it a lot. And what I saw in him during the interview was like, dang, going through stuff like that and trying to get in relationships, it's like I've been in relationships where people who had different lives than I had would either be like, look down on my story as if like, oh, you live like that, like I live like this, and there'll be this kind of like hierarchy of, oh, I come from a 2-parent home, well, you come from this type of thing, and and so those things can be triggering. Any little thing could be triggering, right? Like I'm not good with guys that raise their voice, or like if you come at me a certain way, like that's gonna trigger me a certain way. So there's a lot of those little things that people in those I've seen people get stabbed. I've seen, I've had a lot of people in my life that died, in tragic ways that they should not have died. So these are the things that literally, if you come in my house right now, you will see a baseball bat, you will see knives, you will see guns. There are things in here where I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll go open the front door, I'm like making sure doors are locked, making sure, like there are a lot of little things that if you're not aware of it or talk through it, you will dump that onto a partner and it will not be, you got to heal that like before you bring somebody else into it, because then you're going to be looking to this person to be the filling of the gaps of all the areas that you have not had in your life. And so I think for him, that's why I said I was enjoying the conversation, but I think that he needs to do a lot more work, like to really work through it more. And I think that book is going to be the better book. This is the first one. I think that if he want to write another book, it'll be a better book once he kind of fleshes it all out. And you know, is able to really share the story from that perspective of looking at himself and how he showed up in the world with that background. Like, I think that would be a lot more interesting to me.
And I just also remembered kind of what I was saying before and piggybacking off of this a bit, but I think it's kind of the weird kind of dichotomy, right? Like if you're not completely healed, usually no amount, or not, because no one's completely healed, but if you have major issues that you're working through, no amount of couples therapy, you know, back and forth, up and down, is really going to work in a marriage, right? The problem, the thing I found, and this is like with all relationships in life, it's hard to figure out where that breaking point is. And I think there's no book to that. And that's why we're all figuring it out, whether it's like when to cut off a friend, when to go no contact with a family member, like when to end a marriage. But what I will say is that if you have successful relationships around you, or let's just say marriages around you, or you grew up with your parents in marriages, or you see marriages at your church, what I will say is, for most people who are not just you know, have so much damage that they just can't work through it, it's too toxic to the relationship, right? I.e. living with a complete narcissist that's beat on you and something like that. I'm not saying that, right? But in most cases, marriages require ups and downs, and you will go through phases. My favorite, Judge Lynn Toller, who talks about her late husband, used to always talk about the stages, the good stages and the bad stages of marriage. And there was like a year where they weren't seeing eye to eye, and then they had the best ending to their life. And I just feel like you have a lot more peace when you end any relationship, including a marriage, if you know that you really tried to ride the wave of life to some degree. What I believe is that I think this was premature, in my opinion, but I don't know. And I just hope they don't have a lot of regrets, because I think it takes time to figure out when it's time to call it quits. Because I know, you know, I've talked to Sean. I know, Aries, you talked about your divorce. I don't feel any, I'll just relate to Sean because I talked to him about it. I don't feel any regrets from when I talk to her. I don't hear regrets. But I think, and you can share it with this, Sean, I feel like when you really go through the motions and you really give it a college try and you really do everything you can do, and when you hit that brick wall that is so clear to you and everyone else, people know it. People gonna respect it, and people gotta respect it, because at the end of the day, that's just what it is. But if you don't really try to ride out the waves and figure things out and give it your best try, you're gonna have regrets. And I think that's it's just my opinion. I wonder if he's gonna have that, because it takes time to figure out life with people, especially when you hop into a marriage in a whirlwind romance. So, and we live in a popcorn society right now. Everything is quick, fast. Everyone's on a podcast sharing their opinions. You get an instant picture, instant back. I think we're getting worse and worse at figuring out like how to put things out there and work for things and work through things. And the more society speeds stuff up, the less people want to work through stuff. The less they want to talk things out. The more they're like, I'm going to walk away. I'm done with it. And that's just not going to lead to any successful relationship. And I think anyone who's been married a long time will tell you, people who've been married 20, 30 years, they're going to tell you about the waves of their relationship. And maybe people aren't built for them waves, right? And if you know, you're like, look, I ain't built for these waves. One bump, I'm out. Well, if you know you won't bump you out, that's cool. But don't get in front of that lady. Don't get in front of that man. You know what I mean? Like if you know you two bumps in a half a bump, I don't know. You may want that. Was it the living boyfriend or girlfriend where you can? Ain't nothing wrong with. I mean, well, God said that's wrong, but like, let's take that out of it. You know, so if he or she get on your nerves, you tell them to go back to their house. That's what I would suggest.
One of the things that kind of, you know, and I learned this in therapy and reading several books about marriages and relationships. It is, what is the story that you tell yourself and you tell the world? And if we look at the story that both Jeezy and Jeannie Mai told the world about their marriage, I think there's some issue with that foundationally, right? Because it was almost, you know, when Jeannie Mai would talk about it, and I'm just gonna say, by him not saying anything, that means that he sanctioned it, right? Because they didn't get to an agreement that this is what we're not going to say. But it's almost like she leveraged her first marriage to say, like, she upgraded to now Jeezy, and then she kind of diminished her ex-husband, and then uplifted and pedestalized Jeezy. So that story is already not a good story for a marriage, which, just as you said, and we all know, right? Marriage is full of great things, but there's ups and downs and hills and valleys. So your story should never have a thread in it where it begins where you are putting somebody else down, because that's ultimately going to be the downfall in your own story. So I think that what Jeannie did, and I'm gonna say Jeannie, but then it's them collectively, is talk too much about all the good things too soon in their marriage, right? Oh, I'm submitting now, I'm having a baby now, but I didn't want to have a baby then with this guy. Versus, hey, listen, we're in this marriage. Our marriage story needs to be about Jeezy and I, what we're learning, the foundation that we have, and not about looking back to whatever situation she stepped out of and kind of minimizing that guy. Right. And then he had his own things to say about Jeannie. So they didn't spend enough time investing in each other, enough time uplifting each other, working on their foundations and how they're going to weather the storm and build their marriage story. And too much time about other things, and then too much time talking loudly about what you thought you fixed, or you figured out the answers to, when you hadn't. And I think God, in a lot of ways, also humbles us when we step out too proudly to say, oh, we got it figured out. Yeah, no, we don't. We don't have it figured out, and life has a way of humbling us. And God actually has a way of humbling us in so many ways with the decisions, because now you've got to live out the same way you were boasting. You've got to live this now, end of your marriage out very publicly, which I'm sure is not something that she wanted. And I think she should have thought about that, because now she's in the same position that her ex-husband was in. Now, what's the irony of that? Right? Because everything that we know about her ex-husband, he wanted a marriage and a life with her, and she wanted out from him. So I think, hey, there's a lot of lessons in this that we can take away and just to be cautious about. But I think that the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, I think that's the biggest thing that we really, that's what we're all agreeing about here, is we want to hear what Jeezy is telling himself about himself and what led him down the path to marry her, and then ultimately get to a point where he felt like he couldn't be in that marriage. That story is much more relatable than these little glossy things or a little tidbit here or there. Like, what did you learn about yourself? How did you realize that this was a good decision to make, to be together, and now a good decision to not be together?
And I will add that for me, I didn't learn until I had to co-parent. So I don't know how it's going to look for them in the co-parenting space, but the things that I didn't learn in the marriage, I was forced to learn in the co-parenting side of it, right? Like, the part that I knew I carried in the marriage, I had more passion to actually fix those things, because I wanted my kids to have a healthy life, right? So now, whatever those issues were, you still got to deal with this lady, right? Like, you still have to face this. I don't know, this is the ex-wife versus, people who you weren't married to, but it wasn't like it was that long. So I still don't know, what that's going to look like and how invested he'll be. Hopefully he doesn't just abandon the situation. But I do think that sometimes those lessons come, it's like those people get married and then you write a book about marriage. Like, y'all only been married for this long and you already on TV telling people advice about how to have a successful relationship. I didn't even start giving co-parenting advice to people until way later, when I felt like I was doing it right. Like years and years, probably 5-6 years into co-parenting before I would even really give advice. I was like, I don't know if it's gonna work. Like, I'm trying this and I'm doing it, but I don't know if it's gonna work. So I feel like, you know, kind of back to what you were saying, Sean, like you spoke too soon, you know, and I'm big on like, I'm not trying to get humbled. I'm trying to like keep my stuff like this and protect it. But I think that, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Cause I feel like Jeannie is way more likely to speak on it, you know, than he will. Cause she don't got no shame in her game about putting it out there. So that'll be interesting to see if she actually shares her side of all of this.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, I think Jeezy, Jeannie, and I wanted to even say it earlier on, the trauma that Jeezy's gone through, if he hasn't gone for any therapy, he's a danger to himself. And someone needs to grab him and say, brother, get your ass in therapy, because he's been in a war zone. You know, he just looks okay because outwardly, when it comes to dealing with life's issues, come like getting money, career, music, it's also a war zone. So you look okay, right? But you can't take your marriage and make it into a war zone. You know, you can't take romantic relationships and make them into a war zone. And so listening to his story, I was like, well, your brother died when you were young. Your mom was abusive. You seen someone get shot, right? Their wife get shot. Okay. All right. You've seen a bag of people die beside you. Yeah. Your story is different. Right. So already you have, and like he said, from 8 years old, he already felt like he'd been desensitized. He also was sexually abused. Like that in itself, again, too, requires a certain level of therapy too, because especially as men, we don't oftentimes emote very well because we don't often create spaces for ourselves to emote very well. So even the little bit of effect that would maybe take place, that would maybe cover us a little bit, we don't have that. So that's going to play a part in the way you're going to see women. And one of the things that even I've learned myself, just again, going through studying and talking to mentors and certain people as well who are married, and then even just doing some introspective work. And that's why I came up with the term, the kill switch. A lot of people got kill switches because actually, really and truly, a lot of us are dismissive, avoidant people. It's anxious, avoidant too. But a lot of us are dismissive, avoidant too. And now, if you've gone through a war zone like how Jeezy is, he more than likely is a dismissive kind of person. So what happens is you have a kill switch, and the kill switch is defined as a snap. The moment where you get to a point where someone cuts you enough that you're not going back, and you snap. And once you snap, there's no going back. The problem with that is it's an overreaction to what's actually happening probably in the relationship. Not always, but a lot of times it's an overreaction to what's happening in the relationship. And so, and I'll give an example of myself. In the last relationship I was in, I remember like the first, and I could feel myself going through the stages. The first argument we had, we sorted it out. We prayed about it. It was beautiful. The third argument we had, I said, fuck that bitch. That's it. We done. Oh no, you got to go. You know what I mean? That's when I realized, oh no, I don't take hits very well. I thought I was good, but I don't take hits very well. So as much as I felt like the other person was moving mad, and they were, I myself don't take hits very well. I'm not built for long term because I haven't dealt with some of the wounds that I'm carrying. And actually, that's where a lot of people are. So if you're carrying trauma, you're not built for long-term relationship. You're built for a short-term one, because eventually the hits come in and you can't take hits for very long. You know, you get 1 or 2 hits and then suddenly now you're doing something that's going to sabotage your relationship, or you start pushing the other partner away, or you start doing things that now don't encourage or foster the love in that relationship. And some of us have a 2-year kill switch. Some of us have 6 months. Glory to yours, you have 6 months because you get out of relationships quickly. Some people are scary. Like myself, you have 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Some people have, and some people have 10 years, right? But that kill switch is there. And then you get into a marriage, and then suddenly it's like, I don't know who that nigga is. Who is he? No, it was always there. He's just had a kill switch, and the switch has been turned on. He's ready to nuke the whole stuff. And so a lot of us do need therapy. Or what I mean by therapy, even in this sense, is we actually need to be told about our shortfalls and how we are affected by some of our past trauma. And I think my final point on this is, especially those of us, and I can only talk about those who are dismissive, avoidant, because I am one of those people. We find strength in our independence, and we don't realize we need help. So what happens is you get into relationships, and as you're moving through the relationship, as you get to a place of comfortability, right? When it gets to what I call the plateau in the relationship, where it becomes even. So all those, the cortisol and the adrenaline, once it finally dies away and the honeymoon period is over, and the sun and the sun and the stars and the moon have disappeared now, and you got just a normal relationship. This is where you become the most dangerous person around, because at that point now there is nothing holding you back. It just takes one hit for you to lose your mind, and it's because the way that you're going to deal with someone hurting you and how you're going to interpret it. And so when you mentioned about the PTSD, Siwe, as well, about the war zone, and then also Aries mentioned about growing up in a particular way as well, I can see that from Jeezy. That, you know what, it took one more argument for her to say something. Talk out the side of the neck again. Talk out the side of your neck again with that dragon that you kept on calling it, because she called it a dragon too. I don't know what she was calling it, Enter the Dragon. I don't know if that was her personal thing, but she started talking about, I have this dragon. He said, try me with that dragon again. See what happens. Test me. I will divorce your ass. Right? But she's also learning as well and growing through her process of learning how to be a better partner. Unfortunately, his patience it didn't outlast her growth period. So now that one more dragon that she hits, oh, you're like just like those other people that I can't trust. And you're just like those other people who are trying to hurt me, just like the mother, just like my friends, just like my auntie, my uncles, and everybody else. And it's a culmination of just pain. And actually, he mentions it in the interview that he says he actually he called himself an angry black man, which we normally say for angry black women. He called himself that. At one point in life, he felt like an angry black. He's still an angry black man because he's still wounded. It's just that's hidden very, very well underneath the surface. And as soon as you peel back a few of the layers, bam, you hit that, the anger comes out. And that anger doesn't always mean I'm going to start screaming and shouting at you. Sometimes that anger means I'm going to make a snap decision, and I'm going to nuke this whole situation. You're going to know, I'm going to know, we all going to know, and everybody else going to know. You know what I mean? So I feel like if he wasn't doing personal therapy, you're absolutely right. I think, see what you were saying, it ain't gonna make no difference you do couples therapy, because you need to personally go and do a lot of work on what you're going through, because couples is about couples. Yours is about you and your journey and your story, and that is a lot of trauma for one man to take. That's what I would say. Okay. Yes, Siwe.
I was going to say, listening to that, I will say that it can be good news, right, at the end of this, because I didn't call it a kill switch. People in my life used to call it like the other side of the click, like something would click in my head and I would be absolutely done, right? And it would happen pretty quickly. And I actually used to kind of brag about it. I thought it was a good thing. I'm like, look, my daddy was in my life. He made me. I don't need nobody, right? As long as I got him, y'all can get the hell on. That literally, anytime I saw something I didn't like, bye, right? And everyone knew they were at risk of that because I have that walking away spirit. But what I will say is where couples therapy can come in is that for me, and again, I feel like I'm reformed. I pray that I'm reformed, right? But I think what helped me is knowing when you can kind of do the hand holding technique and you know that someone is legit not your enemy. They're not the things that's triggered you. They're not the people in your past. She's not your mother. She's not the people that hurt you. She's not any of those things. Sometimes, and this is where some spiritual, actually Christian therapy will help. Like when you actually sit down and realize this person is supposed to be walking with you through all of this, right? Do not view them as your enemy. They are with you. I think if maybe, just maybe, if someone would have sat down and kind of framed it that way, maybe he wouldn't view Jeannie as these past traumas. Because what I do believe, regardless of all the things that she did, and regardless of how she came into this marriage, I think she came into it kind of romanticizing him, fetishizing him, and all the things. But I believe for her to let her guard down and have that man's baby I don't think she ever really trusted anybody like that. She was prepared to go through the war with him. And I think she could have been a person to walk through this with, but he had to believe that she was with him and was not going to leave him, and that they were going to power it through together. And I think for me, actually having someone for the first time in my life being like, you can let your guard down. You don't have to be so hard. I'm not going anywhere. It doesn't matter about your money. I'm not judging you. I'm not judging you. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, I'm here for you. Like, we don't have to fight each other. Sometimes when that finally registers, you're not able, you don't put this like, you know what, the next thing you do to me, I'm done. You know, because you realize, okay, you guys, we're on the same team. And that doesn't always work when you have one person that's not on your team, because sometimes when that person is like legit not on your team. And so, yeah, you're going to build up the defense mechanisms and you may cut them off. But if you can find the balance where you're like, you know what, we're imperfect, but we're going to ride this out together. I think that's when it's safe to not be that way. And I think the good news is that if you can find that person and find someone who genuinely is willing to ride through the good and bad and their flaws and your flaws, you can not be that way. You can legit try to get rid of that or suppress it to the best of your ability. And I do think that's possible. And I think that's possible for everyone. We just have to, you have to look, you have to, what does it say? You have to pick right. What is it? Choose right. And really try to work on that. And I do think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the points that I would push back on are just saying, like, I don't necessarily agree just because she had a child with him that means that she is set up to do all the things to be the right partner for him and to be truthful him for her, because their choices, as we've seen, and even as what now he's started to talk about more, is the fact that she showed up just like his mom does. Those things, some of those things, you can't just fix that. And some of those ways that she has, that is who she is. And if the trauma that I have matches up with the trauma that you have, and all it does is become a kettle bomb and ignite and set off flames, then those two people don't need to be working on anything, because all they're gonna be constantly doing is constantly putting out fires and staying for the sake of the kids. We all know that does nobody any good, right? Because now you're traumatizing your kids, so you're just keeping that generational trauma going. And a lot of times what you do learn, because I did couples therapy and independent therapy, and what will happen a lot of times is you will start to learn and evolve for yourself, and that's going to distance you from the partner that you're with, because you two are not on the same page. Now, again, I don't agree with his ways and how he's framing it, but a lot of times individual therapy, especially when you've chosen the person that is the exact opposite of what you need, and you just trigger each other, all it's going to do is continue to happen. And that individual therapy will take you down a path of, hey, listen, this is not healthy for me. This is not doing anything good for me, because I keep bumping up into the same thing, you know? And I think that's the part of it that I'm pulling away from it, is that, yeah, I think 100% these two shouldn't be together, because there's too much work to be done. And Jeannie still has a lot of work to be done on her own. And Jeezy has a lot of work to be done on his own. And I don't think the work that they need to do is going to be healthy for them to try to still stay together and then work on a marriage, which is its own thing. So that's my thing. Like, so I just feel like lots of, you know, I don't know. I just don't feel like she's ideally matched for him. And there's nothing that she was going to be doing that's overwhelmingly going to be beneficial to their marriage, the same way that he wasn't going to be doing anything that was going to be beneficial to their marriage.
I think maybe some of my point was missed, but because I'm not saying that she's perfect for him because she had his baby. I was only mentioning the baby to say the trust that I believe that she had in him was high because she decided to do that when she never felt safe enough to have kids. But what I'll say is, I don't know if they were a match for each other or not. Just like we can't opine what God said for people to leave and to go, I'm not going to sit here and say that they needed to go or they needed to stay. My only point is that if you find someone that's willing to work with you, it may be best to try to actually see how you can work it out before just walking away and referencing what Kojo was saying. If you get the, what is it, the kill switch, and then you kill it. I was referring to trying to undo that kill switch by knowing that if somebody is here to work with you, you may try to work with them. If you find out over time that, hey, working with them, they can't get rid of their traumas and I can't get rid of mine, and we're bringing out the worst in each other, then who am I to begrudge you from walking away? You know that, right? That's fine. But it just seems to me that, and to a lot of people, that we didn't even get there. I don't believe that we got there. But if they were not meant for each other, only God knows that. And if he gave it all he could and she gave it all they could, only God knows that. I know from the outside looking in, because that's what we're talking about here, it does not look like either party, especially him, because it was his decision, gave it all they could for whatever reason, you know, and that's for him to live with. That's for him to live with, especially with a young child. I find it to be the most unfortunate, because that child didn't ask to be here. And when things got hard, you already dipped. But if they gave it all they could, then that's between them and their maker. But from my two eyes, it don't look like that.
I mean, I think I want to also help Jeezy out a little bit as well. I think that the tough thing about this situation, I want to be fair to him. If we knew about Jeezy and his temper the same way we knew about Jeannie Mae, I think our conversation would be slightly different. I think we'd be like, you know what, chick, you didn't have to even work it out, baby. He said he had anger issues and he had a temper and he had a dragon. Yeah, chick, get your ass out. Right? And this is where I want to give a bit of grace to him and say that sometimes as men, we're tasked with defending bullcrap, because in reality, I shouldn't have to be in a situation where you got a dragon. I shouldn't have to be. Abusive mama or not, I shouldn't have to have a situation where your ass has a dragon and you giving me the dragon in the course of a relationship. Now, I said about accountability because he would have seen this before it happened. Before he got married, he would have seen it and he ignored the red flags. That then comes back to what we know about people who are in abusive relationships with their parents. They struggle with boundaries, and he's a big struggler with boundaries, right? And so that is probably contributed towards the course of the relationship as well. But I want to be fair to him and say, listen, I think what he probably thought his back was against the wall. There's nowhere else to go. I'm seeing behavior that my mom did. It was abusive. You're being abusive. I can't come out and just say she was being abusive. I got a reputation, you know what I mean, of the kind of guy that I am. You know what I mean? I also don't want to maybe potentially out you in this particular way as well, right? I'm not saying that he has full, reason as to why he's left. I'm just kind of giving a perspective that maybe he felt like his back was against the wall at this point in time, and that because he's seeing behavior that's replicated. And this is the unfortunate thing about when you get married, that it's different from being in a relationship, which is why I said that he has accountability, because you saw it, you just ignored it, right? But you're now married, there's like, now your back's against the wall. Your back's against the wall and you're seeing behavior that for you is replicating abusive behavior, because your mom was shouting at you probably, well, your mom's cussed you out, your mom took a gun to you at one point in time, and then you're seeing this angry woman in front of you, Jeannie Mae in front of you, this little Jeannie Mae in front of you, giving as good as she can give. Right, letting you know, giving you the busy work verbally, right, and you gave it back as well. She admitted that you gave it back a little bit as well, right? And the little boy inside of you is also got his back against the wall, and it feels like there is nowhere else to turn, right? And it feels like there is no other solutions, because at what point will you change this behavior? And when and how long will I have to wait before this behavior changes? Your back feels like it's against the wall, and this is why I'm saying that this is potentially. Did he get counseling before they started and got married? because that would have helped maybe as well highlight some of these things. Would he even listen to good counsel around him? And that would have told him about maybe this relationship might not be the one. Number 3, he had 2 spiritual. Someone said he had TD Jakes around him, but when he mentioned, if you listen to the interview, he doesn't mention TD Jakes. He mentions Farrakhan. That's a completely different faith and religion. That's Nation of Islam. So it feels like you got a lot of spiritual advisors, my guy. you know what I mean? There's a lot of confusion in the camp. So I feel I feel like there's also that aspect for Jeezy too, which is that as a man too, you might feel like your back's against the wall and there's just nowhere else to turn because it's you against the person, and you maybe want to make it work. But again, that's where I talk about the growth versus the patience. That sometimes waiting for that person's growth. In the meantime, I have to take hits, and I'm gonna look at you like an enemy because it's hard to separate what is not intentional and what is intentional. And it's hard to separate when someone has got an issue that we can see, and I can go, you know what? I'm gonna be graceful, and I'm gonna move past it. But it's hard to do that when you know the person is going to potentially do it again, or you feel like they're going to do it again. And that again comes back to also his attachment issues, but also again what the person's also doing right in front of you. So I want to be fair to him. That he might have gone through that as well, and say that I don't want to be so hard on him that it's like I'm forgetting what Jeannie said. Because honestly, if a man came out and told us he had a dragon, there would be so many narratives that would have formed by now. She must have been beaten. He must have been thrown things. He must have been choking. You'd have formed so many narratives by now. I know this because I did the Nikki and Jamie situation, the way you get some people were forming narratives. So they would have formed so many narratives. If Jeezy came out and said, I have anger issues and I have the dragon and I have to try and work it out, many people would have been like, nah, he must have been doing something to her immediately. So that's why I want to give him a bit more grace. I want to be fair and try to bring that other side of him as well and say, hey, you might have been going through some things with this young lady, and that's why you had to exit so quickly as well. I want to be fair to him on that perspective. Yes, Sean, and then Aries.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think too, and again, I think as we're just offering up conjecture because we don't fully know, but I think we also have to consider his home life. And I know for a man, your home is your sanctity, and if there's not peace in your house, you can feel like the walls are closing in. And a lot of times it sounds like he's not fully healed, right? So if you're unhealed, it's not going to go well. And not to mention, he has his mother-in-law in the house as well, living there. I know there's reasons, and we can talk about the why she's there, right? But she is there, and we know that she is Jeannie amplified. So you've got 2 contentious, conflict of averse people in a house with his issues and the trauma that he has. So sometimes, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you need to be out of that because it's just too much. It's too much stress. It's too much emotion. And if he hasn't done the work that he needs to do, he's not going to be able to deal with all of that conflict coming at him left, right, and center. And I'm sure they have opinions about certain things that he's doing. And, listen, rightfully so. However, the way they're communicating it is going to just ruin them even getting through to him. So I think there is some, a little bit of thread of truth in there that he needed to be out of that. Because I can understand how you can feel as a man when the walls are closing in on you, when that is not a good place to be, and it is actually dangerous. So
Would you on that, Sean? Go for Aries.
I think the kill switch went off. I relate to that. So we call it. So I have this thing with my best friend. It won't make sense to y'all, but it was an incident that happened where I was gonna go on a date with this guy that I met online. I had online dated for like 2 weeks, right? And he wanted to go out, and I couldn't go out. And I was like, well, we could FaceTime to see each other and whatever. And he didn't want to FaceTime. He was being stubborn and was like, nah, well, if we ain't going out, I don't want to FaceTime. I was like, okay, cool. And done. I never talked to the man again, right? So we joke. I'll be like, you should have FaceTime. Because if you would have FaceTime, we could have still been talking, right? So now every time the kill switch goes off, that is what we say, right? We be like, should have FaceTime. Like, that's literally the joke, right? And it's because it's like, you don't know when it's going to happen in this type of situation, right? Like when you have that, anything could make it go off. You can't predict it. It's just that one day. Now, there's times where you can kind of predict that it's going to go out, but when the kill, you can't predict the kill. Like you can predict, I'm going to go off on this person if they say one more thing to me, that conversation you have. But the actual, I'm done, you can't even predict it sometimes. And I think that it does go on those layers of like your mom passed and around the same time you're getting married to this lady. So there's so much in that in and of itself. I think that he may have felt like he was at a place and didn't realize when all those layers came with the mom and the her and it was just like, nah, I ain't got time. I can't do it. They might have went to therapy a couple of times and it wasn't looking promising enough early on enough. You know, it was like, this is not gonna work. I know for myself, I went to therapy in both of my marriages. We did for a year, you know, full year. Like I'm gonna give all I can, right? Before I like run off. I say I'm a runner, but I really will do as much. Kind of to Steve-Way's point earlier, it's like I'm gonna try as hard as I can. I did not want to get divorced like either time. So I'm like, let me at least say if I want to give everything that I possibly can to the situation. But if the other person is not there, I'm not gonna sit there and be miserable for the rest of my life either. So listening to Jeannie again, her personality is not one that I really vibe with anyways. But listen to what she said was like, nobody ever checked me until I was with him. So like the fact that now he's the first person to check you, and then you going back and saying, who the hell you think you talking to? While I'm trying to be like, hey girl, we're not doing that. Like this is the first time. I truly believe that maybe, and this is just my theory, we're assuming that she was showing this before. She wanted to get married. She knew what she was signing up for with him. I don't think that she was showing that side of herself as much before. You know, women know how to get married. You know how to be sweet and kind and do all that stuff, you know, to get the ring. And it don't seem like they dated for, I don't know how long. Did they date a long time before they got married? I don't remember that part. But I'm like, yeah, certain triggers that you see will make you be like, I don't give a damn. I'm done. There's nothing you could do. I'm out of here. And so I can totally relate to that part of it. Not saying that's right, because yeah, you signed up, you should at least try to work it out. But there are things that you can see that tell you, I'm getting the hell out of here, because no, you are not safe for me. Because maybe you trigger something in me as an angry Black man that I don't want to act out on. You know, what you do, your dragon triggers my lion or whatever I have, or whatever I call my side of it. So I don't really have an issue with the divorce part, to be honest, as far as like, there's so much more to his story, you know, in this, that I think that, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, like he needs to flesh out so much more of his stuff. Like it's gonna be a tragedy for any relationship that he gets in at this point, until he gets through all that other stuff. Everything is going to trigger you anytime. So yeah.
Want to play this little clip from the interview. This is a little part here. I thought this was quite interesting what he says here.
That don't want that, which
1000%.
I don't understand that. I think you want the balance, right? I think women want leadership. They want to feel protected.
Do they want leadership?
Well, it depends on the woman.
Right, yes.
Depends on the woman, right?
Right.
And it depends on where you're leading me. Because if you're leading me someplace where I don't want to go, then no.
Right.
I was laughing because that is the wildest statement for him to make, that he damn right knows women want leadership. But for him to question it told me, you know who he's talking about. He ain't talking about women. He's talking about one specific woman who don't want no leadership. Yeah, and that's what I said. Yeah, he definitely encountered that in a relationship. Yeah, you found that out. What's you guys' thoughts to that? I see you nodding your head. So
yeah, well, first of all, Nia Long, boy, my birthday twin, she's something else. So I think that I even have a little pushback for her, because when women say that, it gives me pause too. Like, yeah, we want you to lead as long as we want to, as long as it depends
going
on
where I want to go.
Exactly. So then we're really not leading you.
We're not leading you.
It's not just, you're not being led. So I think there is that, like, kind of, it's the duality of, do women really want to be led? Because kind of sort of they do, but they want to be led, but be led to where they want to go, and then you got to make them feel 100% comfortable. And we all know that when you're leading somebody, they're always not going to see the vision, right? So leading me also requires trust. And I think if my trust issues bump up against your trust issues, then I'm always going to be calling your leadership into account. Now, I understand why Nia said that, because she's still got her own issues with the way her dude at home was leading. So she's like, yeah, I might be okay to lead, but if you're going to lead me down a path to public embarrassment, then I'm not with that. But at the end of the day, I think, scratch that part of it, there's still that issue that exists between men and women about leadership, because it does require trust. And sometimes that trust means you're not going to always understand my decision, but you trust me enough to say, okay, I know you got us. And even if I make a mistake, you know that what I was doing was in our best interest, and you're not going to consistently question my leadership when just because I made one mistake, right? So I think there's on both sides, right? On both sides, they were telling a story there.
Y'all not getting me down this rabbit hole, just so you know. I'm just engaging. So don't even ask me. Aries, you got it. I'm not doing this.
That means you know exactly what.
Trust is key. Trust is key. It's funny because there are certain people men that in relationships, out of relationships, that can say something. I will go along with whatever they suggest, whatever they say, because I truly trust that they have my best interest in heart. They are like, it just isn't. It's not even something that I think about until after. I'll be like, dang, I just really trust this person. Like, they really, And then there's some where I'll be like, child, ain't nobody trying to hear that's what this big girl talking about. So I could get where he might feel that way. Maybe he has not exhibited great leadership skills. I don't know. But also you can have someone who just doesn't want to follow. I mean, so there could be a lot of combinations of that not going well. So I can see that, but I think that he clearly was talking about his relationship. That was very obvious with his facial expressions and how he was quick to respond back to her saying that. So yeah, I mean, that whole subject will take you down the rabbit hole that Steve doesn't want to go down. But I do. You said what?
I love the rabbit hole.
But I do think that I agree with Nia on that statement, because I do think that, especially if we're talking about, I'm talking as a Black woman. I'm talking as a woman who leads every day. I'm a really great leader. So when I'm around other men that are great leaders, I love it. I want a passenger princess me, please. I don't want to think. I don't want to have to know anything. I don't want to have to do anything. So there's there's a spectrum, as that goes. But I think that, I don't think he probably has been a great leader either. I mean, we just got to talking about all the trauma and the things that he got going on. And if you're not self-aware of your issues and your things, like you're not going to be capable to even like see things in a clear way to lead through a path. Like, so he needs to go get his stuff worked out so that he can, nurture that side of himself and maybe become better in that area as well, without comparing him in his marriage and situation, just him individually. There's a lot of areas that need to be worked out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, look, I personally think, there's a bit of both on both sides, both Jeezy and Jeannie May here, right? Or Jeannie Mai, I keep saying I change her name like every second. But, I think there's a bit of both sides, right? Because I think she's spoken about the fact that she's been independent for so long. And I think this is where a lot of people, not a lot of people, I think this is where relationships take a very interesting turn, right? Because she is a spirit that cannot be easily tamed because of her history. What she's gone through makes her not easily tamed. But that also is what creates the challenge for a lot of men that oftentimes want to put the reins on the horse. And the problem with that is you're going to realize that the horse got a lot of horsepower. You understand what I'm saying to you? So once you try to put the reins on that horse and you realize the reins don't work too well, then you have a problem. And I think personally, I always say this I've said it several times. Man, them need to not choose women that don't naturally, instinctively want to follow your lead. There are women who, when they meet you, instinctively want to follow your lead. And there are women who instinctively, when they feel you, go, I'm not 100% sure. Leave the hunt, I'm not sure, alone. Okay? She's not sure, so leave her at the shore. You understand what I'm saying to you? Don't deal with her. Not because she's bad, but because it will affect you later on. And I feel like choosing Jeannie, she might be a great businesswoman. She might be a great person, stardom, be independent, do her own thing. But you have to understand that the consequence of that is that she is not going to always follow your lead in the way that you're going to want it to happen. Because she has her own mind in the way she thinks and the way she wants to move. And she's been doing it for such a long time. For her to now switch, you're asking a lot of that person, which is why I said again, for men, you choose somebody who's willing to follow your program. We're not talking about robots, but we're talking about somebody who says, I can trust your leadership and I don't mind following the program that you have. But if you know you're going to choose somebody who you know is going to wreck the program, I don't want to hear you complain later on about the person who's not following my program when you know blatantly the person from the beginning wasn't about that. And I always give that example. I was talking to a friend and I said to the person, I gave the example of the forked road. Now, the person said they didn't say it, but I said they said it. So it is what it is. Okay. I talked about the forked road and I said, if I was to make a decision and say go right and you say go left and we discuss it and I said, let's go right in the end and you follow me and I'm wrong, what happens next time? Well, I'm going left next time. Oh, well, then that's it. That's it. The person's letting you know that one mistake, you're out. At that point, I don't need to be with you. You're not my person because you don't want to trust my leadership. I'm going to get things wrong. You're going to get things wrong. So if that person is not for you, you need to go where you're going to be able to be trusted to take a leadership. I was just with a friend the other day and I said to her, I really appreciate you taught me something. Because we was at the perfume shop and I wanted to buy a new perfume. I was like, I need to buy, because I was like, when I went to Jamaica, I was going to buy one at the duty, but I was like, they're going to take it off me before I even land because I got no check bags. Okay. So I was like, okay, when I get back to UK, I'm going to buy some YSL perfume. So I really like the smell of it. Something was, I don't want to say which one it is because someone's going to steal it and then they're going to be wearing it. But
for you or for her?
For me.
Oh.
For me. And so I was like, yo, I want to buy this thing, right? So we went to the shop, and when we got to the shop, I already had a list on my thing of what perfumes I'd already tried of the YSL brand. So I showed her the one, and I said, and I had put one next to the note, I think it's this one I want, right? And when we started smelling the perfume, she started listening to this one's okay, cool. And then she just kind of gave her, I'm not sure about this one. This one sounds good. This one says, and in the end, we narrowed it down to like 2, right? Got to the 3. And then she was like, hey, here's what I'm going to do. She's like, there's 3 here. There's one that I really like. I'm not going to tell you which one it is. Let's see if we're going to come to the same place. I chose the one I wanted. We came to the same place and was like, okay, we have the same kind of taste there, right? But what I actually realized about the whole situation was that was actually an exercise of trust because first and foremost, some people will just tell you straight, get this one. They ain't gonna waste their time. They're gonna tell you, get that one. They ain't gonna give you an option, right? And the opposite can be said for me too. I could just be like, I'm not gonna consult you on my decision. I'm just gonna choose whatever I'm gonna choose. I don't care what you say. Well, if you choose a different one that I'm gonna choose what I'm gonna choose. But actually becomes an exercise of trust that can I trust your judgment? Because if I've chosen correctly as a wise woman, I should be also to be able to take into account your considerations. If you tell me, A, I think A could be a good decision, I also have to weigh up and go, hold on, I have a smart woman, I have a wise woman, I have a woman that's actually sensible. Her decision, let me take that into account and take it into a proper account, and vice versa. If she looks at me and goes, actually, I have a very wise man that can lead, etc., she can also say, do you know what? I said A, but he said B. I can trust that he's going to go with B, right? And so for what I'm in a sense kind of coming to a point of saying is that we need to stop choosing people that don't trust. Stop feeling validated by trying to convince somebody that they should trust you. And that's what also gets people burnt, because you're trying to convince somebody to trust you. And when they suddenly trust you for that little bit, and then you remember, they also have a kill switch too, because they haven't fully got to that place yet. And you make one mistake, they're like, well, I gave you a chance. This nigga can't lead. You can't lead. You know you can't lead. I'm going to take over from here. Okay? So you have to be, I'm talking from the male's perspective, choose a woman that is going to trust your leadership. There are women out there that will, and there's some women who will tell you, I'm not really sure about you, right? But if you can't complain if you didn't have to convince her about your leadership and literally try to win her over with your leadership. You probably gonna find out later on down the line that they ain't gonna really, get with your leadership, But that's my perspective. Anyone else got another perspective to kind of add into there as well? Because the ladies don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but we are in the rabbit hole. Okay, all right, and we're almost halfway to Alice in Wonderland. So please give us your perspectives. Yes, C-Way, I see.
I don't have. It's not even that controversial. What I'll say is, I think in the beginning, Jeezy was he was getting off by trying to tame the beast, and she was getting off by trying to pretend like she could be tamed. And when they got married and the chips came crumbling down, she didn't want to be tamed and he didn't want to tame her. I think that was probably, as my hypothesis, what is going on. I do believe that there's some women that don't want to be led by anybody, especially if you get to a certain age and a certain stage, it's going to be even harder. But I do also believe there's women who will be led by the right person. They just have to find a man that shows some leadership skills. So what I will say is that not all men are natural born leaders, and not all women are natural born followers. But if you are with a man that wants to be a leader and you don't trust his leadership, you probably shouldn't be with him and he shouldn't be with you, right? And that's just what I would say. I mean, as a woman, I am not going to trust every man because he has a penis. I'm not trusting that you're leading me anywhere just because of what. But what I will say is, in most things in life, you do need a leader. Somebody, there's a captain. When you fly a plane, there's a co-captain, there's a captain. There's coaches of teams, right? There's bosses, there's CEOs. Leaders are in our society for a reason. So I can't be ignorant and say that in a relationship, everything is just going to be 50-50 and everyone weighs in. Usually one leader emerges, right? And I don't mind as a woman letting that be the man, but I feel like also a man has to show some type of leadership skills. And there's a lot of men that maybe should just be following the women. And maybe that's cool for their relationship. Maybe the woman should be leading. If the man ain't got no leadership skills, maybe the woman should be leading. That'd be cool for them. Whatever works for them. For me, I personally don't want the stress of leading all the time. I don't want to do that. I just don't. That's just not what I want to do. Right. But that's all I would say. Not every man is a leader, and not every man should be a leader, but if you are a traditional woman and you want your man to lead, then make sure you trust his leadership, because staying with a man to undermine him is not going to be a healthy relationship. Doing what you said, Kojo, you make one mistake, I'm going left now. That's going to lead to, what is it? A carnage.
Carnage.
It's going to lead to a carnage, Yeah. So yeah, do it. Do what works best for you. Whatever that is.
I sense carnage coming from the bottom of the screen, to be honest.
I didn't say nothing for nobody to disagree with, honestly.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying in general, I see carnage emitting from the bottom of the screen. I don't know who it's coming from. Sure, not Aries. Who's bringing? One of these two are bringing carnage, or both of them are bringing carnage. I feel the black hoodie energy coming through. So, yes, Aries.
honestly, I'm with D-Ways on this one, because I do feel like there are some women who really want to run the show, and there's men who love it. They love women who love to run the show, and they would much rather sit back and allow that woman to run the show. And for me personally, myself, I don't I like the way that I like leadership in my life is I want to be able to not have to do the things. If I feel like I always have to be the one to do the things, I'm gonna get upset. Like I am exhausted. I am tired. I am over it. I am the fabric of a lot of lives that I'm ready for to be the fabric of somebody else's life. I want someone to be like, let me make sure she's good. Let me make sure I've taken care of the things. I'm ready for that. Like for me, it's not that I need someone to lead me down, the road. I'm fully capable, clearly, to take care of myself. But I would love for my partner to be confident enough in their leadership abilities that even when they know Aries is better than me in this area, let me consult with her on that particular thing. Cool. We could do that. You know what I'm saying? But don't lean on me for every single thing. Like you need to be able to do. What have you been doing by yourself? Like before you got here? How are you taking care of things? Like you've been taking care of yourself. You've been living life. You're paying your taxes. You've been, doing this. So like, don't come over here and now be like, oh, now I'm in this relationship, because some men really look at women as, oh, now I have, someone who's going to cook for me, clean for me, do it. It's like the typical duties that, gender roles or whatever. And I'm like, how about we just figure out what works for us, and whoever's best at these things, that's cool. But I just want to know that I can trust that if you say I got this, cool. I don't need to micromanage the situation. I don't want to micromanage the situation. Like that's not sexy to me. That's not good. It's nothing that I want to do. I want to know that you said you got it. I don't got to think about it no more. And yes, there's going to be times where you're going to make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Not a big deal. If I already have a track record, I see a track record of success and, you being able to do the thing. That's why I trust you in the first place. I know that you are capable. I know that you have done it. You've shown that you have the ability to do it. And so for me, that's what I look at. It's not like I'm not going to just blindly follow someone. Like that's not how this works. However, when you do have that track record of showing that you have been successful in your life at making good decisions and whatever that is, I'm going to give you that chance to do that, and it starts small. It may start from when we first start dating, and you can go make a reservation, on your own without me having to be the one to make the thing, do all the planning and all that. Can you at least be like, hey, I got this. You know what? I made a reservation for us tomorrow night at 8 at this place. Okay, I see you. Like it's little things that can lead up to building that trust over time, And so I don't know. I just feel like I want to be able, I'm a person, Jay just said it. I have car anxiety because I've been in car accidents where people, don't know how to drive. And so I don't trust a lot of people's driving. I drive myself a lot of places. And so if I can relax, there's a rare handful of people that I'm like, I actually can trust that I could sit in this car and not trip because they know I have the car anxiety. They're paying more attention than probably they normally would if I wasn't in the car because they're thinking about me in this moment and knowing that I'm already potentially could be uncomfortable. Little things, So I see these husbands who they like, what they called them back in the day, hen pets, they want to be hen pets and they want it to be like that. They like, cool, I just let my woman do all the things. And those women like to do the things. Great, work it out. But for me, I don't want to do all the things. And the look, even the look you gave me and Sean gave me, that's typically how guys would think because of the type of personality that I have. They'll be like, you want to run it, you want to control. I don't. That's the problem. I really, really don't. That face. I really, really, really don't. So enough about me. We're talking about Jeezy and them. But yeah. Sean?
Yeah, I would say that I'm glad you touched on it because I do like the fact that, you know, we got to see it play out on the show, that if you don't trust it, then you're not going to move towards it. And I think that's the best option. And I think just the same way, you know, it takes two people. And I think just like as men, we know, I think it's the same on the other hand for a woman, you know, too. You know that if you don't respect the guy's leadership, you know, you get that feeling and it's best for you to back away because all you're going to do is constantly be stepping in. And I think more people do that more than not. Like they'll be like, well, if you can't, you know, I haven't built up the trust yet. Fill in the blanks of whatever are the reasons why, but they still move forward in that relationship. And they're like, well, then I'm going to step in here. And then I'm going to do more of this here. And I think as much, and this is probably the little way where I disagree with you a little bit, is that I don't think that there are really men that are happy with their wives leading them. They settle for it, but underneath it, they're still not happy. There's still angst. There's still, you know, they still don't enjoy that feeling because it just never feels right. You know, and I'm not saying, and I agree, like men just shouldn't naturally lead just because we're men. No, we should have the ability to make sound decisions, good choices. You know, we should instill trust. We should definitely consult our women on any and all things, right? So I'm not saying that. However, I'm saying in those scenarios, a lot of times people make their compromises in a lot of relationships. So they may just be like, you know what? I want her this much, so I'm going to tolerate it. But at the end of the day, trust me, I've seen some of my other, you know, friends, and a couple are married and their wife is always, and when we get to, you know, our little man session, they're like, yeah, you know how she is. That's what they say. Yeah, you know how she is. Yeah, that's how she is. And then the other fellas are laughing like, yeah, we know how she is because we be laughing at you when we see how it plays out. So I think that there's still a little bit of contention. No relationship is perfect, but no man is truly happy. Like, okay, my wife leads me along and I'm just running behind her, letting her, you know, make all the decisions. And I'm just sitting back here happy. You're muted, Coach.
Sorry, I was saying that it's quite interesting for me to this conversation. I was literally having this conversation with someone else, and one of the things that came to my mind also about leadership from both perspectives is the communication about people's also anxieties and insecurities as well, right? Because as a leader too, I don't know, unless we've had extensive conversations, and even then still, there is a need for people expressing their insecurities and their anxieties and their hang-ups, so that when I'm leading, the things that you require of me to cover you in those circumstances, I can also do, because there's nothing scary being and this is also, and it's me giving perspective, that when you're leading also, that you may be reacting to something in a more overt way or even a more harsh way than you usually do to something, because there's a wound there, or there is an anxiety there, or there's insecurity in that area, and I don't know. So then what happens is that person's reaction is far more wilder than maybe I'm used to, or it may be wilder in the situation. Then, and also then I'm then triggered, and then I'm saying something too, whatever. And that also plays a part. And I think that's also a part of that give and take from both sides as well. Like, you know, I also want to explore and understand what like, for instance, like you were saying, Aries, the car situation, you know, I know it's a very simple situation, but maybe the car situation, you need to feel comfortable, and maybe the way I'm even sitting may be triggering you the way I'm sitting. Like I'm sitting like I'm a boy racer, and that could be triggering for you. And I need to understand that if I'm going to sit in the car seat, if I'm going to sit in a car and I'm going to drive, that this seated position for you is not going to work for you because it's going to trigger you to make you feel like, you know, I'm boy racing and I'm not really caring about you. And I think that is the give and take about the leadership and the following also, is that there has to be dialogue. There does have to be some communication, and there has to be this notion of working out where insecurities are, and vice versa for me too. If I'm a leader too, I'm more than likely going to have 1 or 2 insecurities, or even more than that, who knows, where things I don't make me, or things that make me anxious or whatever, you know, like I'm using a wild example, which is not even men to women, but really just so, like, you know, like when someone says I'm in the kitchen, I don't like people coming into the kitchen. Like, I don't want someone micromanaging me. That's what I should have said, but it's a better example, right? So you got to let your partner know, hey, maybe I don't like being micromanaged. I want to get this done. I'm going to get it done. Here's a deadline, and here's what I'm going to do it by. So I think that also plays a part for both parties, that there has to be that real good dialogue to find out where our weaknesses at, so that I'm also prepared and I'm ready to adjust for you, and vice versa, you adjust for me, so that we can both be in unison and alignment moving forward, because leadership is not domination. Yes, Aries.
That goes back to the trust piece, right? I mean, it's all trust in this. But then it ties back into what Steve said about, for me, as a person who comes from a certain type of background, I need to know that you are on my side. You have my back. You are we are in this together. And I'm going to know that obviously by your behavior, how you care for me, how you cover me, how you're like, hey, are you comfortable? If you're not comfortable, we could leave. I don't care if we at your grandma's house. I don't care if we at wherever. We getting out of here. You know, like, there are certain actions that a person can take to build that up more and more, just to show like, hey, I am here with you. We are a team. We are partners. Like, that is going to continue to build that, where I'm like, he got me. I ain't got to worry, because he's looking out for me. He is making sure that I'm good. And whatever decision he is making is because he's already thinking of me in that, you know, as we go forward. He knows I have car anxiety. He's going to make sure that as we prepare to go on this road trip or whatever it is, he's going to, you know, make sure the situation is comfortable for me. Like, all of that plays into it, you know, for me, and feeling secure. Otherwise, I'll be like, well, I'll meet you there, because I'm not riding in the car with you, you know, or whatever. But that extra step that someone takes to be considerate of that makes me more comfortable, right? It's going to make me trust you a lot more. And if you're a person be like, girl, chill, it ain't no big deal, I got this, I won't get in the car with you ever again. Like, just something that simple. I'm like, nah, you're not listening. Like, you're not listening. So I think, again, it just goes back to styles, you know, leadership styles. You know, the trust is the number one piece. And then, you know, just really listening to each other and making sure that communication is there. Like, I'm not going to get in the car without telling you before I get in there what the situation is, you know. Be like, well, I drive myself most of the time because I've been in a car accident, you know, with other people, and it's just something it's there. It's just what it is. And so, again, they would have to tell me what those things are that they need from me. You know, if we think about the Jeezy thing, it's like, don't raise your voice at me. It triggers me. You know, when you raise your voice, you're going to make me go into fight mode, and we all not going to be happy in the situation. So these are things you have to say if you really want it to be like more of a peaceful situation. So, yeah.
Love it. See, Sean, do you have any other points?
Nope, I don't.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, no, I absolutely get that. And I think there's all different types of leadership styles, right? And I'm definitely not in support of, or hopefully my message isn't one that's coming across that I feel like men should lead from an authoritarian standpoint, because I don't think, you know, especially in 2023, that's just not, you know, that's not even feasible, let alone it's going to be healthy and or work in the situation. You know, so I definitely do support a collaborative leadership style. I support, one in which where there is an equal exchange and flow of ideas. I think for me, the biggest sticking point is that trust, so that when it comes time for the situation, that you have trust in my decision, and ultimately, right or wrong, you have confidence in me and know that I have our best interest at heart, no matter what the outcome is. So that's what I'm looking, that's what I'm looking for, and I think is ideal. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to lead nobody down no crazy cliffs, because that's not going to benefit anybody.
Appreciate it. All right. See what it says. So tired of us losing the balls. Pause. But obviously, listen, I think this G situation has sparked some conversation that's been quite intriguing. And we've spoken for the last 2.5 hours about some stuff. And I think there's some deep stuff in this as well, not just about Jeezy, but in terms of relationships. And so I appreciate the fact we had 400 people turn up and just listen to the show today. Let me get Sean just to give us a quick benediction, as he always does. The brother is anointed to give the benedictions, Brother, take it away, Sean.
So I think tonight some of the lessons that we learned were, one, be conscious of the story that you tell yourself, right? About yourself and about other people. And make sure when you're entering into a marriage that you have a healthy marriage story, and that your story is not based on diminishing any one other person, and rather than uplifting each other and uplifting the marriage. Most importantly, if you're going to tell the story, tell the story. And if you're not going to tell the story, don't tell the story, because not being accountable for your decisions, not being accountable for the things that you do and the choices that you make doesn't bode well for anybody. So ultimately, whatever choice you make, however you got to that choice, whether it was God that helped you along the way or gave you a vision or word, or your own self, own it and be accountable for the decisions that you make.
And Kojo, we got a super chat. You saw it? You got a super chat at some point.
Oh, yeah. FG said, love seeing you on a panel tonight. By the way, did you skip the season of Married at First Sight? Because I definitely did. Lol. Now we're back on Thursday nights now, Married at First Sight. So we're back tomorrow with Married at First Sight as well. So watch out for that. We'll probably do it around about, I think, 8 p.m. again, because I think it's just easier. And we'll try and keep it to a 2-hour show, because I want to keep things short, because we'll be out here on these streets. Okay. So yeah, we'll be at Married at First Sight tomorrow. So we'll be back with the episode. I think they're finally done with the weddings now. They're now on the resort now, I'm guessing. So I'm gonna tap in and get in there. It's probably the first season I actually haven't watched any of the weddings, which, you know what? Married at First Sight tired me my ass out. So they gonna get what they gonna get. But yeah. But listen, audience, thank you so much. Aries, Seaway, Sean, thank you as always. Much appreciated for joining as well. Monroe, thank you for joining the membership. We appreciate you. We've got another one coming in 2 weeks' time, so we'll love to see you. You know what I mean? I want to let you guys know on Sunday, we're going to have a live, myself, Seaway, Sean, and Jay. We are going to give you a special live. We are going to be talking to you guys about our journey as panelists. It's been an interesting last 2 and a bit years. Am I being too excited about saying 2 years?
No, it hasn't.
It's been 2 years? Okay, yeah. Fantastic. I was make sure I wasn't like adding years to you lot. But it's been an exciting 2 years. We've gone through some okay. So we wanted to bring a special live to you guys on Sunday. I'm gonna put up the poster. I'm gonna do a poster tomorrow for you guys. But we're gonna have a special live, just talking about our journey, talking about some of the things that we've had to work through as a group, because being together for 2 years, even though we're in different places, but when we come together, we're all coming from different places, different backgrounds, and it's been quite an intriguing journey as well. And we formulated such a tight bond and unit. I call us the awesome foursome. That sounds kind of wrong, but just work with me, guys. We'll work on a name. The core four. Right, I'm gonna go with that one. The awesome force was not working. We've killed that name. So the core four. So Sunday we're gonna have a nice little live. We're gonna talk about a little bit about our journey, how we've worked out certain issues and problems that we've had to work through, and how we've managed to maintain and nurture the relationship. And I really do hope that this will also inspire other people too, because we are 4 people on the internet. Like I swear to God, like we were 4 random people on the internet coming together, and we've developed this kind of tight bonded family as well. So if we can do it from 4 corners of the globe, I believe that others can also do it and take some inspiration from it as well. Your best friend could be on here, guys. Sean's like a big brother, you know what I mean? So see where's that my sis, within reason, okay, because she was trying to beat me up. But and shout out to Jay. Jay's my empathic.
They're trying to beat you up today, so there you go.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, we're gonna give you that live on Sunday, and have a good time, a bit of fun, and just kind of like a recap of the year as well, because it's towards the end of the year. So I guess they will let us know about how their year has gone and what they've experienced, what they've gone through. Especially Sean talks about it quite a bit as well, how he's gone through some changes as well, health wise as well. And Seaway has been an amazing rock. That's you don't know who your sister or brother is going to come from and where they're going to come from. The Bible says, the song that says, wherever's cometh my help from, hey, you don't know where it can come from. It can come from YouTube. You understand? So we're going to have some good conversations on Sunday for you guys. Okay. All right, listen, and thank you again, Aries, for joining us. Sean, Seaway, we appreciate y'all. Yeah, we're back tomorrow from Right at First Sight. So if you watch, then you better be here tomorrow. Okay, all right, and then ready to move on the old Saturday, on the old Saturday, all right, guys, like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of uploads. We appreciate y'all. Stay locked, stay loaded. We gonna be out. But before I do, let me leave you with a little clip. I'm loving this meme. Honestly, it's my favorite one. It's my favorite one. Just look at it. Look. When life is this is how life can get you at one point. Yeah.
I'm glad we gave Ayanna a break, because I was like, well, I see one more
she's a break. Slapping that table is enough for us. See, let me do it one more time. My favorite meme, just one more time. When life is hard for you and you're at this point, just remember. I don't know what you need to remember, but just whatever grand or your mum said, whoever said it, just remember that. All right, guys. Well, appreciate y'all. Stay low.